Okay,
Hey,
welcome.
Justine, you good to go?
There you go. It says recording in progress. So welcome, everybody. Today is the June 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Battery Park City Authority of Community Board 1. And I welcome you. Oh, and I've got dogs, sorry, who are barking. I welcome you all here tonight. We've got a big agenda, but I'd like to thank you for coming. And I also want to recognize the people on my board. Kathy Gupta, who's my co-chair, is not able to attend tonight, but value her service and looking forward to when she is able to attend. And then on our committee tonight, we have Betty Kay, Bob Schneck, Jeff Galloway, Judy Weinstock, Sarah Cassell. And I'm looking to see who else we have, but I don't see anybody else. So that's all right. So we will get going with that. First on our agenda, if you want to put it up, because I think you have an agenda, right, Lucian? Yep, there's the ground rent discussion. Hopefully, we do have members of the Homeowners Coalition, and I believe the Battery Alliances are going to come in. Plus, I know that a bunch of people have asked for just basic condo owners in Battery Park City to come forward and speak and be heard on this issue. I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Jeff Galloway, Betty Kay, and Bob Schneck for the work they did compiling research about the ground rent history and just about information in Battery Park City. And to me, most importantly, finding sites and making connection to sites, sites, so that when we're saying things that there is something to go back on and look at to verify the comments that we're making, because a lot of information flows around and it's nice to have some substantiation behind it. That said, I have a presentation. I am trying to make it fast. I will try to make it fast. I've been practicing, and I think that what I want to do is give an overview of the situation and then talk about where if we can come to some agreements, where we can go from here in terms of a resolution to try to support the condominium owners in Battery Park City for affordability and sustainability here. So Lucian, if you give me control and everybody bears with my ineptitude, I will try to pull my slides up.
You did just fine, Justine, when
There
you
you
did
go.
last
Well,
time.
let's see what happens. Okay, so share my screen. Now you're all going to see this. All right, and so now I need to go back. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now let's see. You said view full screen mode. So now all you're going to see is black for a minute now, and then okay. So now it's just these slides. If anybody can't see something, tell me. But I'm going to start going. And all right. So tonight we're looking to talk about and focus on supporting the approximately 3,861 condominium owners in Battery Park City. Some history. Okay, here, before we go to that. So I want to talk about and make it clear, the reason why we're talking about this is because affordable housing crisis is raging throughout New York City. We all know and have talked about in this committee and in other committees about how it affects renters, but it also is affecting condominium owners. And the condominium owners in Battery Park City are not immune to this. As people know, I hope should know, Battery Park City itself is a kind of a hybrid entity, basically. We are formed under the rubric of and controlled by the rubric of the Battery Park City Authority, the UL Cary Battery Park City Authority, which is a public benefit corporation whose mission is to plan, create, coordinate, and sustain a balanced community of commercial, residential, retail, and park space within the 92 acres within Battery Park City. On those 92 acres are residential and commercial buildings, and everything that's here is subject to a 99-year lease. Of those buildings that are in the 92 acres, 18 are condominium buildings, and each has its own separate ground lease with Battery Park City Authority, which is set to expire in 2069. And you can see the beautiful, going back, the beautiful citation here that describes the Battery Park City Authority and how it has its own ground lease. So thank you to Betty, Bob, and Jeff for that. All right. Affordability in Battery Park City has been an ongoing issue for condominium owners for a long time. But some local like grassroots organizations have formed to represent the condominium owners, one of which is the Battery Park City Homeowners Coalition, which is a not-for-profit corporation that was organized in 2004. It existed then, it exists now, and it advocates for Battery Park City condominium owners when dealing with Battery Park City Authority as it relates to ground rent negotiations. Members of the boards of all 18 condominium buildings in Battery Park City, or representatives of the board of the all 18 condominiums, are on the Homeowners Coalition, and then they have a board within the coalition that does the negotiations. In 2021, a new group came up, the Battery Alliance, and it was formed as a complement to the Homeowners Coalition, made up of many of the same members that are in the Homeowners Coalition, and they are pushing a little bit more aggressively now, and you'll see why in a little bit, but they are part of and formed and pushing in conjunction with the benefit of homeowners in Battery Park City, as is the coalition. And again, we know that the land lease expires. Okay, so here, if anybody wants to know, are the 18 buildings, where they live, and approximately how many units are in each building. All right. Because our last call, some people had some questions about the history of ground rent in Battery Park City. I'm going to give a little talk about it. This information is coming from some information that was provided to me by Bob, Betty, and Jeff, as well as Bob Zach from the Homeowners Coalition, as well as members from the Battery Alliance. So it's a compilation of information that I have gathered, and it's just information. So as people are aware, back in the 1980s, Battery Park City Authority and commercial real estate developers entered into a agreement for the construction of the original 11 buildings in Battery Park City. The ground leases were negotiated with a deal in terms that are typical to commercial leases. And these commercial developers, as they made these deals, entered into agreements that were typical and useful and contained benefits for commercial developers. Once they sold the units to the individual condominium owners, they took all their money and left, all the good news and they left, and then people who were left behind as individual non-commercial developers were bearing the brunt of the deals they made and the financial burdens that were built into the ground leases, in part of which would take effect 20 to 30 years in the future, which is now. And actually some of it has passed already now. Some of the benefits that the commercial developers got that individual condominium owners as just people do not get are certain tax benefits. Also in the commercial leases, they made deals with ground rent resets. Even the ground lease and the ground lease itself with the termination clause at the end of it, which we'll talk about, was very typical of a commercial ground lease. Because you think about this, a large corporation is coming in, renting their space, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, whatever they're going to be doing. But they can just pick up and go someplace else. They don't have a vested interest, financial and emotional, whatever, community building interest in something that is their homes. It is not sensible to have made this commercial ground rent deal apply to residential homeowners. Sorry, I've got to click on this to flip pages. All right, so something that has come clear to me from everybody that I have spoken with who was a condominium owner in Battery Park City is that unless all 18 ground leases and amendments are immediately restructured, the majority of middle class and senior and fixed income condo residents in BPC will be forced from their homes by taxes, not rent. Back in the day, annual ground rent payments in the first 20 or 30 years were determined by a preset schedule of dollar amount payments until the appraisal date. This reset date that I think you've all heard about is part of the situation. There's also a double-digit step up that is built into some of the condominium building leases, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The reset date, what is it? Well, the annual ground rent increases per residential condominium building will be increased to the greater of 6% of the fair market value of the land under each building, considered as unencumbered by the ground lease, which is a fallacy because it's not unencumbered by the ground lease, or the ground rent payable in the prior period increased by 25%. 25%. Who can absorb a 25% increase in their rent? Think about that for the people who are renters trying to understand this. Okay? With the, and that's this clause B there, okay? That's the greater of. However, we all know in the real estate market in New York City, it's almost a certainty that the fair market value of unencumbered land under the buildings will yield a greater figure. So that is the basis of which the annual ground rent increases on the resets will be put into place. So we're assuming that's what it's going to be, and we're going to assume that it's greater than 25% in 1 year. What does that mean? Okay, and this is from Bob Zach, who was so kind to put into these projections and tell me what he felt and what he has presented to the Homeowners Coalition. I'm sorry, as the presented on behalf of the Homeowners Coalition to the Battery Park City Authority and their consultants. And he's basically stating that there's going to be a substantial risk to homeowners that they cannot pay these ridiculously increasing and unconscionable increases. It's going to cause near certainty of defaults and payment of the common charges, which means the buildings can't make their ends meet just to run the buildings and keep the lights on. Near certainty of defaults in mortgage payments, and certainly increases in personal bankruptcy. You're looking at the deterioration and failure of Battery Park City as a residential neighborhood because the condominium owners will be forced out. Okay, that is what Bob Zach has told me, and I believe him, and I agree with it. Additionally, what's in it for the Battery Park City Authority? If that all happens, the rent revenues, the ground rent revenues, and the income that the Battery Park City Authority has been collecting from us, $338 million last year in pilot, more than ground rent, but 47.5 or so million in ground rent would disappear. There's nobody here to pay it. So it is an unsustainable ground rent model for residential buildings. It's forcing people out. With the ground rent resets, we talked about the Homeowners Coalition. It was formed in 2004 in anticipation of the first set of resets because the original condo owners were looking at resets to come into place between 2009 and 2012. Back then, the Homeowners Coalition version 1 challenged these rent resets and said they were destabilizing, inappropriate for residential condos, unrealizable, and claiming then, as we are now, if the lease terms were enforced, foreclosures will follow. Nothing changed in 2007. In 2009, the Homeowners Coalition version 1 demanded that the Battery Park City Authority revise the ground rent escalation formula, once again saying it's unaffordable, it's unconscionable, it's unmarketable. Nothing changed. It was not until 2011 when elected officials, city and state, mostly state, got involved and forced the Battery Park City Authority to address the Homeowners Coalition's demands that progress was made. And that led to the 2011 settlement agreement. And again, I thank Betty and Bob and Jeff for the citation here. So you know that it's someplace, and if people want to look it up and read what it is, read it up. It's there. Okay, so what about this 2011 settlement agreement? We've heard talk about it before in this committee. People reference it. Bob Zach references it. What did it do? Well, according to Bob Zach, it created a more equitable ground lease terms for the participating 12 residential condominiums, and it included pushing the rent resets dates out farther away for about 30 years. So for these 12 buildings, they're facing the new rent reset date in 2038 to 2042. The agreement was based on creating parity, equality among the 12 condominiums, because each of them had a widely diverse ground rent per square foot charges when they entered into their original contracts, and that continued going forward. Now, this is my little edit here. Parity did not and does not equate to affordability or sustainability for middle income, seniors, or other fixed income condominium owners in Battery Park City. Now, that parity, and in turn for the temporary reset reprieve, that Homeowners Coalition version 1 was forced to agree to a 3% or higher compounding ground rent increases per year for some of the buildings until the new reset date for those condos, for those who had negotiated lower ground rent per square foot. While some of the other buildings whose ground rent per square foot were much higher, they got locked into lower annual percentage increases, some even lower than 1% a year. Nothing changed from their amount they owed, and nothing changed from the ground rent square foot footage amount. However, the annual increases amounts were increased for those who had low ground rent square foot amounts at one amount, and then were increased at a much lower level for those who had a higher ground rent reset amount, ground rent square footage amount. Now, that alone didn't create parity, and that wasn't enough for the Battery Park City Authority in terms of collecting revenue. They additionally demanded that some of the buildings who had 3%, and I'm throwing this out there as a figure because it's just easier to calibrate or calculate, but those who had 3% or higher or a smaller ground rent per square foot number were also assessed with periodic double-digit percentage step-ups, because the aggressive pace of the 3% or more was not enough to give the authority what they wanted to attain in terms of an income level, and it was not enough to bring parity, which was one of the concerns that was raised back then. I can tell you that many, if not all, of the condo buildings who were subjected or subject to a step-up have gone through at least one since 2011, and there are additional step-ups interspersed over the next 15 years or so. So what I want to putting in, and again in red, this is my editorial. This would bring all 12 buildings to the unaffordable ground rent payment levels of the most costly buildings of the 12 in Battery Park City. Thus, parity would be achieved, but at the cost of affordability and sustainability. And just as a thing, fair market value resets are not the only issue. We know, and I'll talk about it in a minute, some of the buildings, there are 6 newer buildings that are up now facing their first reset. That is devastating, and that needs to be addressed. But for the other buildings that are not facing a reset in the next year or two, or one past, as you'll see, there are other things. The compounding percentage increases in ground rent are not sustainable because nothing, not Social Security, not the cost of living, not annual wage increases, not interest rate, not any quantifiable measure of income to a condominium owner, a middle-class condominium owner, a senior condominium owner, or anyone on a fixed income increases at these rates. Therefore, the current rate of increase for most of the original 12 buildings is not sustainable. Additionally, the periodic double-digit step-ups are not sustainable. The 6 newer condominiums have their first reset date now, and as I'll tell you in a minute, and Bob Zach explained to me, River and Warren has been presented with unconscionable and unacceptable terms by the Battery Park City Authority's consultant. And as you've all heard us talk about, it's not just the ground rent, it's the pilot, it's the civic fee, it's also monthly common charges that keep the lights on in the building. Like I said, each building has to carry those costs. And many condo owners, middle class, senior, fixed income, or not, they all have mortgages. Other things we have to think about are the 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. That's a state goal of reducing emissions, which was going to request that along with Local Law 97, which is a city goal to reduce emissions. Laudable goals, but that is going to cost, to meet those goals, it's going to cost each building a lot of money to retrofit, and the homeowners a lot of money to replace their gas appliances, among other things. I'm not familiar, but once again, thanks to Betty, Jeff, and Bob, we have a site to go to find out what those things actually entail. Pilot, as I've said before, there's no cap on the growth. Things we're not eligible to, and things that have changed over time since 2011. New York City homeowners, unlike other New York City homeowners, residents of Battery Park City are not eligible for SCREE and DREE on their property tax pilot, even if they would qualify based on their income. 2017 federal tax changes also capped the income tax deductions for state, city, and property taxes at $10,000 a year. And given the cost of the ground rent and the pilot, there is bills for almost everybody who owns a home in Battery Park City that is more than $10,000 a year. And it's the taxes that had in the past been deductible. So all of this is making it unaffordable for middle income, fixed income, and seniors to remain in their homes, the homes they own in Battery Park City. Bob Zach gave me some of these critical dates. I'm not going to read them to you. But the bottom line here, and I want to make it clear, is that the residential condominium ground leases, as they are written, are fatally flawed because they were based on a ground lease model. It must be fixed. It must be fixed now. And we, as a community board, need to step up. Okay, I talked about River and Warren. What Bob Zach shared with me is that the Homeowners Coalition, through the Battery Park City Authority's consultant, has said in return, I'm going to go backwards, but in return to push out the fair market value reset date a few years, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, not get rid of it, but just push it out so it kicks the problem down the road a bit, still keeping the specter of this sort of Damocles hanging over their heads. In return for that, they want the homeowners at River and Warren to accept an immediate tripling of their ground rent. They want them to form a new security fund to which current owners would have to contribute millions of dollars now and more in the future, and a flip tax payable to the Battery Park City Authority, which would also further penalize sellers of these condo units. Now, you would think that these security funds or the flip tax would be going for taxes, for something else. No, it is a fund that's held to preserve and protect the ground rent payments into the future, because realistically, there's going to be a lot of foreclosures at River and Warren, and they're not going to make their payments. This will ensure the Battery Park City gets its pound of flesh. Sorry, authority gets its pound of flesh. Another thing that Bob Zach told me that is not acceptable to him is that the Battery Park City Authority, through its consultant, is attempting to divide and conquer by refusing to speak to anybody at this time except River and Warren, because they think that erroneously, and I hope it's erroneously, that condominium owners in Battery Park City will allow any one of its neighbors to be forced into such an onerous and unsustainable terms, or to allow.
Justine, hi,
Yeah.
sorry, it's Nick Fordone. I just, that I think the world of you, but there's a number
I
of
know.
things here that are just flatly wrong. So I'm going to have to correct the record. You let me know when you'd like that to happen.
I will give you a chance to speak, and I'm hearing all that. This is what Bob Zach presented to me as.
No, I understand. I know that Bob Zach is going to be speaking with
I know
our
he
consultant
does.
on Friday morning. So it's untrue.
Oh,
push
so
out to
something
the
new is
public.
coming. I love it. That is good news.
No, it's not new. The conversations are ongoing. It is untrue and inaccurate to suggest that we're only speaking to one building. We're always
Excellent.
happy to and have been speaking with a number of buildings, a number of residents, including at this committee for the past number of months.
Nick,
we have rules of how we're conducting the meeting that are parliamentary.
Yeah.
And no one's supposed to butt in anybody.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
But
let
let
me
me
Justine,
finish. And Nick, you will have, yes, you will have your turn. And I know,
Thank you.
I love you too.
Right.
You know I love
I
you
just want to
too.
make sure that folks are making their decisions based on, an objective
glad
set of facts.
I am glad to hear you say that the last part where I'm saying additionally, the divide and conquer is not happening. I am very glad.
I said it last month too. It's never not been true, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Again, this is from Bob Zach, and Nick, you will have a time to refute this because you certainly have the right to. You're a party here, and I'm so grateful that you're here to give context and color to this. But one of the things that I know in conversations, but again, this is from Bob Zach, this is not me. The authority has verbally stated that the fair market value based ground rent increase formula is unsustainable. But at this point, it's not off the table. And I'm looking forward to hear what Nick has to say about whether it will be off the table forever, not just push push the can down the call or whatever the heck the phrase is. But I'm looking to hear for his input. And anything here that tells me that these are wrong, I am so happy to hear it. But my understanding as of before Nick speaks is the authority is willing to renegotiate the 2011 settlement agreement terms now. But according to Bob Zach, so Nick, make a note and tell me if this is not correct. Bob Zach understood the consultant to have said that whatever is agreed upon with River and Warren would be applying to all 18 condominiums, including the imposition of flip taxes, sustainability costs, and creation of the security funds with the required annual increases. And I am hopeful that Nick is going to say that's not true, because all of those things are unacceptable to any of the 18 condominiums. So if it's not true, I'd be happy to hear it. And again, there's an imminent affordability issue for 12 of the condos now, because of the annual compounding interest increases these buildings face and will continue to face, sorry for my typo, through 2042. You can read it. Middle and fixed income owners can't keep up. It needs to be addressed now. And remember here, part of why we have the ability to have this conversation and look to the Battery Park City Authority to help us here, and to look to the Battery Park City Authority to help preserve, or create really at this point, and preserve affordability in Battery Park City, is because their resilience action plan includes that it wants it to be create and supervise and rule over, whatever the right word is, an inclusive community that supports housing affordability as part of a diverse and livable community. Again, it's here, it's on their website, and thank you to Betty, Bob, and Jeff for getting that for me. All right, so things that I have to say, and I'm going to try to get through it. I have one more slide after this, or two, but they're short. So what I've understood now is through the Homeowners Coalition, the Battery Alliance, and the people I meet on the street. Homeowners in Battery Park City have asked for CB1's help, and they're also looking forward to, I think, asking for our elected officials' help. But step one is here, and if we can put this forward, it will be the roadmap to move forward. Because I want to say that in keeping with this board's focus on community, affordability, inclusion, and in keeping with the Battery Park City Authority's commitment to these things on its website and in its mission, this resolution that I want to write tonight is going to ask the Battery Park City to address the homeowners' concerns, to call and amend all ground leases with 18 buildings now, with the goal of being able to protect and preserve affordability and sustainability of the middle income, seniors, and fixed income condominium owners currently in place. And I also want the authority and elected officials, and actually everybody on this board, to acknowledge that many of these constituents have owned their homes in Battery Park City for over 30 years. They survivors of both terror attacks on the World Trade Center, the Hurricane Sandy, Isaac, all the hurricanes that have come through, and they have returned and remained to rebuild and renew Battery Park City. And I want everybody to acknowledge that many of these same people, some of whom have been and are currently on our board, are now suffering and dying of cancers and lung disease and other 9/11, 2001 related illnesses, myself included. The ability to age and die in place is just as important to homeowners as it is to renters in Battery Park City, and it is incumbent upon us as a board to recognize that fact and take up, I'm going to call it arms, I hope it's not arms, but take up the fight here and advocate for homeowners as strongly as we've advocated for renters. So therefore be it resolved, this is what I propose, is that we call upon the Battery Park City Authority to offer a ground lease amendment to each of the 18 buildings that contain at least these three elements. This is the starting point for discussion. It is not the end all and be all, but it's a starting point. Extend for an additional 99 years, all ground leases. Let's get rid of that 2069 sort of Damocles hanging over everybody's heads. Starting in January 1st, 2022, and for the duration of each ground lease, set annual ground rent increases for each of the 18 condominium buildings to the lesser of, my ask is 1%, or the current scheduled ground rent increase per condominium that is currently in place. There's a wide range of those rent increases per condominium of the 18. Anywhere from below 1% to I believe it's above 5%, but there are schedules in place. Or the annual rate of increase set by the Rent Guidelines Board for the New York City rent stabilized apartments, whichever is lower. Yeah, and I said the lesser of, okay? And 3, include no other fees, no taxes, no terms, no setups, step-ups, no resets, or other conditions in such amendments to the ground lease offered by the Battery Park City Authority. And we ask elected officials to do the same thing. And I am done now, so I would like to unshare my screen, and I'm going to try to figure out how to do. Or maybe you just make me not a presenter anymore.
And you might want to keep it on there, just in case
okay.
people want to reference slides.
Okay, how do I do that?
You can read.
Aha, here you go.
Um,
Okay. I put back into view. Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, I will, that's a good point. And so now I'm gonna have to rely on you to.
So say not now for the keynote update, because
Got
that
it.
might prevent you from sharing, and then go back to,
Full screen.
yeah, there you go.
How did I get to Keynote? Because maybe the.
You know what?
well,
You may have built it in Keynote, but you had to open an Acrobat.
Yeah, so let
so
me
I
go
would-
back to,
Yeah.
yeah. So sorry, you guys, bear with me. That one, thank you. And that's what I want to view. Full screen mode. Okay, so I'll go to my, therefore be it resolved as this pops up. And then I'm going to rely on you, Lucian, and who will be my second in command? Who's at a computer? Sarah Casella, you at a computer where you can see and look at attendees and hands raised and keep track of that, because I cannot see that. And
I got you, Justine.
That
Bob
makes
Schneck has his hand up.
perfect. Bob, go ahead, please. Unmute yourself, Bob.
Okay, I should be on and unmuted.
Now I hear you.
I
Perfect.
wanted to say that Justine and I had a meeting with Lindstrom Shinazaki, who is an advocate of Community Board 8 and also chair of the Community Board 8 Roosevelt Island Committee. And it happens that the Roosevelt Island structure and history is a direct parallel, is the most parallel to the Battery Park City structure in history. And so here's some, just in terms of educating the public, here's some facts. Roosevelt Island is a narrow island in New York City's East River in Manhattan Community Board 8. It is owned by the city, and you can see the parallels between Battery Park City and the Roosevelt Island, but was leased to the New York State Urban Development Corporation, UDC, for 99 years in 1969.
Mhm.
The Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation operates and maintains the island's government and infrastructure and is guided by a board of directors. The UDC established Roosevelt Island on the principles of urban new communities under President Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs of the 60s and early 70s. And it was built with the intention of using some of Roosevelt's ideas and beliefs, for which the Roosevelt Memorial Park was named for freedoms. The development of the new community was authorized by the 99-year ground lease and a general development plan agreed upon by New York City and New York State, just like Battery Park City. The GDP, which has been amended from time to time, provides for the development of housing, shops, and community facilities for mixed income, handicapped accessible residential neighborhood. And now, to illustrate what that means briefly, here are some comments by Lindstrom Shinazaki. The first thing that's really important to her is that home ownership, and really important to the structure of Governor's Island, is home ownership is what creates and maintains a stable community. And that is why affordable owned homes are so vital. Roosevelt Island built affordability into their ground lease. 20% must be affordable. None of their money leaves the island as it does in Battery Park City. And finally, I think this is something that I believed when I moved in here too. I've been trying to make Roosevelt Island the best neighborhood in New York City, and that's my goal. And I think Justine and I share that goal. We want to
We
make
share that
Battery
goal.
Park City.
That
And
is
I think
something
I think Dale Brewer would
Yeah.
agree with that goal too. but we're all part of Manhattan, of course. And then here's my opinion after going through all this. It's very brief. The Battery Park City Authority and Roosevelt Island Operating Corporations are products of the same era, have similar governing bodies, and the mission of both is a balanced community. The living goal of the RIOC is a stable community of affordable owned homes, while BPCA is structured as more of a for-profit payout commercial venture. If this were not so, why would battery park owners be literally facing confiscation of their properties without confiscation at the end of their ground leases, spiraling resets, and punishing rules in the interim?
That makes
So
sense.
that's my comment.
Thank you, Bob. And I also want to say something just quick, which I think you said, and maybe I glossed over on the slides, but we've said this before, and then Betty and Jeff and Bob confirmed and had the links to this being a true thing, that on June 17th, or whatever the day is in 2069, that the ground lease is up for each of these buildings. The condominium owners must turn over their units of the building free and clear of any tenants or any people living there for nothing. That is what it says in the lease. The difference in Roosevelt Island is that does not happen. I'm not quite sure I understood exactly what she was saying, but she said, no, that is not what happened. And maybe it reverts to them or something, but whatever. We're not in Roosevelt Island. We have our own things to fight with here. And I guess I really appreciate the work you put to put out that information, because I think what it shows is Roosevelt Island was set up from day one to be an affordable community. And lip service in Battery Park City to having affordability here. But it was lip service and quickly went out the window. But I'm sure someone else has their hand up. Betty, I see your picture, so I'm assuming that means your hand is up, but I don't know.
The next hand that went up is Andrew Osborne from the public.
Let Andrew Osborne, if that's okay, I'll let Andrew Osborne speak.
Mr.
Hey
Osborne,
guys, so thank you. So by way of background, I was the lead negotiator for the coalition. I'm also the lead negotiator for River and Warren. So it might be helpful for me just to give some clarification.
Yes, please.
As it's been described, the description of the deal at River and Warren is actually inaccurate to Nick's point. So again, I wouldn't want to hang my hat on that. Much as we shared with the board of the coalition from River and Warren to keep them at the same point, I think there was an accurate transfer of what's going on there. But I'm not going to summarize what's going on. I'm not sure this is the forum for that. But all I would say is, and Nick can back me up, there are a number of levers that we've all explored to bring out a reasonable agreement between River and Warren, acknowledging that it was going to flow through to the remainder of the unit owners. And that is still ongoing to the point of conversations today, a revised proposal last week, and that is absolutely hot and under advisement right now. So I wouldn't want to paint it that there's not ears that are listening and there's not flexibility and collaboration in trying to work around some of this. Some of these things are difficult to take on board, and we've addressed them head on, knowing that they will have ripple effects back through that. We've also approached on some of the requirements for completion of works to discuss whether the cost or value of the completing those works would be as the direct dollar for dollar relief from ground rent. So
what
again,
works,
Andrew? Things that we're all talking about, which would be, should help to show that, look, they are here to help land a deal, as are we. I just want to make sure that people don't represent what you've put on the page as the current deal that's out there. We are apart, but we are actually making headway. So I just want to paint that. That said, everything that you said is absolutely accurate, and it's accurate in that we still have the threat of having to give back our condos in 2069, that the relative owned value between us and the BPCA is going to change hands dramatically over the next 50 years, with effectively the economic ownership transferring to BPCA. So the thing for us is to set our rents. There's only 2 other buildings that come up between now 2025. let's get 15 of the 18 done in short order, and then let's really focus on getting the coalition and or other related bodies in the alliance or whatever to get everyone to sit at the table and figure out the extension. So that would be my goal. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I think it's a bold goal to get more engagement with the public. So I applaud that. But I just wanted to speak on behalf of Rural Warren and say, look, we are on it. We are working on it. We're absolutely working on it with an eye to helping, but we appreciate that we may need more engagement.
Well, question for you, Andrew, right?
Yeah.
Andrew, so number one, thank you for the clarifications, because I had that information. That was as of May when I met with Bob Zach, and that's what he had. So good to know that in the interim, there's been a lot of progress, and that is excellent to know. Thank you. And thank you, Nick, too, for popping up and saying that. My question to you, though, Andrew, is what about these asks that are here? You want them or you don't for River and Warren?
I mean, I don't think it's appropriate to get in it, but I think you can imagine our candid assessment of those asks versus others. So I don't think it's appropriate. Or this is
Well,
the
no,
forum
I
to-
actually, I can't imagine in my capacity here asking for the community input. Basically, what we're looking to do is represent and advocate for affordability for all condominium owners who actually want to be having the help from us. But if there's some that don't agree, you've got every right to not agree, and I'd like to know what it is that you don't agree with.
I
And
think
and
there are
I'm not,
things that- No, I think-
and let me say this, I don't want to
okay.
get involved in the
Yeah, no, I understand that. And you've got to understand it's the nature of negotiation to put things out there and see if they stick. And
Yep.
it's the nature of negotiation to not say anything and stop and hold pat. So, and
Exactly.
in the middle is where you settle the deal. So I think you can imagine our reaction to some of the things proposed and what we have actually said to it. So without getting into it, we're trying to focus people on what we're supposed to be setting, which is ground rent for the next period. So as you know, ground rent is typically settled in 15-year periods. They settle it for a 30-year period as part of the 2011 ask at River and Warren, which is trying to settle our next 15-year period so that we can all get back to the negotiating table as a group to figure out what happens after that 15-year period through the remainder of the lease and getting an extension.
Okay,
So yes, there were things we didn't like. We were absolutely clear that we didn't like, and we said, let's keep it simple, stupid, and get back to negotiating a ground rent. Anything else which is an additional ask, which is relevant today around sustainability, should have a financial consequence that we shouldn't be picking up over and above what we're obliged to do anyway. And that's the tone of how we're approaching it.
Andrew, these resolutions are speaking specifically to ground rent, but thank you for sharing your opinion, and I'm gathering that you don't agree with any of these things. So thank you so much, and I appreciate.
Yeah, I don't agree with. No, it's not that I don't agree with what you're resolving, but I don't agree with your characterization of the deal, because I think we'll have.
I will change that. That is, yes, I stand corrected. I'm only as good as part of this call is to gather information and have people speak to me. I have reached out to all condominium.
You know, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I just want to be fair.
Okay, that I'm just asking because I know what's going to happen in our committee, and they're going to say, well, River and Warren doesn't want this. So that's
Doesn't want what? What are you saying?
does
Does
not
what?
want to extend the ground lease for 99 years. Does not
No,
want
that's
to ratio the
exactly
ground.
what I'm saying. I'm absolutely.
That's all. That's what I'm asking about. Just what's on the screen right now, if you can see it.
Okay,
That's
so
all.
am I an advocate for a 99-year lease? I'm an advocate for buying the fee as well. Am I an advocate for some of the things that you're doing?
Well, the only thing I'm doing is this. It's on
I'm
this
not
page.
sure that, look, again, I'm not going to speak on behalf of River and Warren without.
No, just speak to yourself. That's all I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot speak to that because we haven't raised it with the people in our board, and we haven't raised it with our constituents to say, are we behind this? And it'd be unfair to me to speak out of turn on that. Do I
Fair.
agree with the point 2? I don't necessarily agree with point 2. Do I agree with point 3? I agree with point 3.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's all. That's what I was asking, because this is really what I'm doing tonight, or the community board is trying to push for, is what everybody can agree upon and ask for that. And what can't be agreed upon, we put aside. This is a discussion now. We are forming this resolution. We are not. Okay. So thank you so much for coming, and please.
And again, and I can stand back from it because I'm in look, you can have an alliance and a community board make a resolution entirely outside of my specific negotiation or our specific negotiation with the authority. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. Please stay on the call so you hear what everybody else says, and if you have something else to add in, please definitely raise your
I'm
hand.
happy to answer questions. Obviously, I've been close to this for 5 years.
Thank you, thank you. Lucian, who else is next?
So in order of hand raises, I believe Jeff Galloway, Betty Kay, and Bob Schneck's hand is back up.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'm
Yes,
next.
sir.
I think Andrew's comments are illustrative of some of the concerns that Betty and I had as we were discussing this over the last few weeks, which is kind of dangerous for the community board to get involved in details of negotiations going on between other parties. And we're not in a position as board members and as a board as an institution to really know what the parties are negotiating and what the parties have concluded are in their own best interests. I mean, it would be a shame for us to pass a resolution that would be counterproductive to the River and Warren ongoing negotiations, and they are the building that is most immediately up. And for that reason, and Betty will speak next, so she can speak for herself. But what she and I had discussed, and I think she embodied in a draft resolution, were more general asks rather than specific asks, general principles that should guide. And I don't think, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm not wedded to the particular asks in her draft, but I would be happy to support those particular asks, but I'd also be persuadable for modification of them. But the asks in her draft were, number one, yes, extend the ground leases beyond 2069. That is something that needs to be done, and ideally for another 99 years. Secondly, get rid of the fair market value reset clauses, except perhaps as a cap, because for all the reasons you've mentioned, Justine, they're really not appropriate for residential buildings. Allow the condominium buildings to work together to negotiate shared issues so that it's not just one by one, through the Homeowners Coalition or otherwise, as well as recognize the sustainability expenses that they may be required to shoulder. And there could be others, but those were sort of 4 points that she identified. And I think we also, as a board, we have to realize we're talking about taxpayer money here. This isn't a developer negotiating with a bunch of residents. This is the taxpayers of the state of New York negotiating with a bunch of residents. And I think we also have to realize that the current management at the authority is probably the friendliest to affordable housing that we've ever had and that we may ever see. And I think it's a mistake in a resolution to recite what may be perceived as past sins of the authority, going back to 2007 or whatever, when there were Republican administrations in office, and I don't think there was a single board member of the authority that's currently in place that was in place then, as well as we have to recognize that the board will change over time. So whatever deal is negotiated now can't be dependent upon the good faith of the current management. It has to have all the terms in the deal that no matter what the management may be 20 or 30 years from now, the deal is still acceptable. So I think I'm reluctant to get into the weeds of you can't have rent increases greater than 1%. That kind of thing. I don't know if that's a good deal or a bad deal. I mean, you're talking about taxpayer money. You don't know what it's 1% of what. A lot of the unaffordability is related to pilot, which has nothing to do with any of this in terms of the ground lease, and it's an issue that's common to all of New York City.
That's the next fight, Jeff. That's the next fight, but they won't let me do it here.
It's a fight we need to perhaps have, but it's obviously that's a zero-sum game. New York City can't run a deficit the way New York City can't print money the way the federal government can. And so
Understood, Jeff, understood, but just like part of the deal to preserve affordability such that it's left in Gateway for the next 10 years, part of the deal was to give a reduction in ground rent to the landlord there. Part of what we're saying here is give us the ability to stay in our homes too.
I think that's a valid
and I say
principle.
us,
I think
more
the
than me.
principle, the principle, yes, there are taxpayer issues, there's zero sum issues, and then there's also broader issues of the sustainability of the current residential population of Battery Park City that should be preserved. How that translates into specific negotiating positions is complicated, and whether that requires 1% or 3% or 0% or a reduction in rent, I don't know, and it probably varies from building to building, but I'm not sure the one size fits all is viable. I just don't feel that I have enough information. So I'll just pause on that. I just think that there's some general principles that we have to keep in mind. Taxpayer money, general principles of preserving the sustainability of the current residential population, and getting into the weeds may be a little bit dangerous.
I feel as if so basically, let's call on someone else and let other people talk before I speak. The 1% can come out, but I've got to tell you, there are some buildings where the current rent schedule ground rent increase is 0.5%. Okay, and it's the lesser of the 1%, whatever they have now, and whatever the Rent Guidelines Association board comes up, which is.
I only use that as an example of a weed. I don't know if 1% is good, bad, high, low. It's just a weed that I don't think I have enough information to evaluate whether that's more than we should ask for, less than we should ask for, or something else. That's my point. It's not that it's good or bad.
I hear you, and I guess my answer back to that is that the current increases as they are, even if you get rid of the step ups and the resets, are unaffordable. And so there has to be some sustained growth, because you're right, we do pay taxes, and the taxes, and this is a tax, and nobody here is saying we don't pay, not to pay the tax and not to support the authority, because it needs to be supported, and it's a value that we're being asked to pay. All we're saying is let us have the growth annually commensurate with the income growth annually. That's all. That's what this is saying. And that's what this point is talking
That
to.
may very well be a worthy goal.
If you could figure out a way to say it, Jeff.
Starting at the current level that is equitable. I mean, if somebody's got a great deal right now and you're going to limit it to only 0.5% or whatever, I don't know if that's a good use of the taxpayers' money.
Let me say this to you, Jeff. Nobody has a good deal right now.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is that I don't have enough information to evaluate a specific proposal. We need to know the particular ground leases, and
we won't, because everybody wants to keep, as the gentleman Andrew from River Warren, they want to keep it all close to the vest. They want to keep it.
I don't blame them. Negotiating in public is very difficult.
Exactly. So I get that. So I don't think we're going to have the specifics of everything. So we're basically trying to, what I'm trying to do is create broad strokes. I'm really happy we like 1 and 3. I'm trying to read through. Betty got me her whereases, most of which are fine, because I got to tell you, most of the information in the slides came from what you and she put together. Some of it was a little addition, or I have my little commentary. I did add in about River and Warren based on what Bob Zach presented, and I certainly I'm not, that's stricken. I don't know how to do it while I'm talking to you on the phone. On the computer, I don't have the power to change it. But anything.
I mean, let me just add one more general comment.
Yeah,
and I don't know whatever the resolution ultimately looks like. I want to make sure that we're not implying bad faith on any of the negotiating parties, because I
don't think I did that, except that I'm giving the consultants a hard time. I actually think
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
I mean, me personally, in presenting this, what we come up as a resolution, I will agree with you. We have to be more moderate or moderated. Next, please. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
I don't know who you said next.
The next was Betty, and then Bob.
Next.
Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, I'm going to push back pretty hard on this. What I'd like to see is the therefore be it resolved that were in the draft. Because Jeff and I worked on it very hard to keep it more neutral, so people could see a more neutral, but actually more comprehensive. I'm the only person on the board that lives in one of the 6 condominiums. that is being reassessed, because River House is one of the 6.
Yep,
And I think it's very important
yep.
that the others see what the options really look like, because I agree with Jeff. I mean, obviously, we've spoken about this, that we need to stay out of the weeds. And I have a few observations to make that I think are especially problematic.
Okay.
One, we should not
Wait,
insert
before you go on, I
ourselves-
want to say, I don't know how to make it happen to come on the screen, but
Yeah, Lucian?
yeah, Lucian, if you have access to what Betty wrote, her first, therefore be it resolved, I take it all. I agree with it all. And then put it up here so people can see it. I don't know that we need to have the one about timely and fair negotiations, but maybe we do. You know, I mean, Nick and River Warren has said that the Battery Park City Authority is acting and connecting with them, and Nick has said they're connecting. So if they are, we don't need to tell them to connect. They are doing it. But if you want, you know, I'll
You
go.
wanted a safeguard because there are 6 of them.
Perfect. Okay, fair. Okay.
And there are other options or steps, as Andrew brought up, such as extending ground leases and.
Okay, good. So you took control. Thank you, Lucian. So now I can sort of see a little bit more.
It's hard to see when you're sharing for sure.
Yeah, it was kind of hard, but no. So
You go to
the
the
rental-
therefore be it resolved.
yeah, go to the therefore be it resolved because I
Justine's correct. She covered quite a bit of the rest.
and I would say that part of my part of the slides and talking about some of the stuff was color and to give information, not to make it part of a resolution.
Yes, and Jeff covered a lot of what you see in this first, therefore be it resolved.
Yep. And I agree with every one of them. I mean, let's if we can figure out a way to cut and paste this says what I said, that this encompasses points 1 and 3, I think.
It just stays out of the weeds that we do not understand.
It
And
does
we
not
did
mention
not
point 2.
Sorry, and we did not insert ourselves in Gateway's negotiations. And
No,
I
we
don't
did
want to
not.
jeopardize the rental building's future negotiations either. But-
Yeah, I don't know that we did any surface. I don't know that we did Gateway of service, but we were not asked to, and we were not asked to be involved in Gateway. They did not want our input beyond a generic, make a nice deal or be, you know, work with them. They wanted a very generic, and we did that. And we supported them the best. We gave them the support they asked for.
Right, and I'm kind of asking for the same thing.
Okay.
So should it be further evolved? Yes, the elected officials at the state
Yes.
level are important players. Although I understand they're already speaking, and I'm not saying that they aren't.
No, but I think it's
Further
good.
to let them know.
What I believe is trying to happen is a oh God, what's it called? A bill. They're trying to put out a legislative bill, is what I think is the push here. So part of what we're looking at is trying to give some color and some rubric to say, hey, we support this too, because they're looking to the community board to say, where do you stand in all this? Do you support the battery? You know, do you support the affordability? Some of these asks, and yeah, we do. So
Right. Well, actually, I want to make a few points. If
yeah,
you'll-
so
if
no,
you
go ahead.
don't
I
mind.
interrupted you. Go
One,
ahead.
I don't think we should insert ourselves in negotiations that we don't really understand what's going on. 2, the buildings do differ, as some of them used to be 421A buildings, which did affect their ground leases and others did not, giving them higher ground leases at the start. So if they move towards parity, of course, they're treated a little different from each other, since the 421A residents are no longer there. Also, 3, the rent control rates have increased, do require subsidies from others in the same building. I don't know who is going to do that for us.
No,
And they still have complaints about the poor repair that occurs in those buildings. I don't think most people in Battery Park City are looking for that to happen to the community or their buildings.
I mean, I'm going to interrupt
I
there.
also don't
I want to say,
want
you
to
do
neg-
realize that nothing is reducing the amount of income in any of the, even in part 2, nothing is saying the Battery Park City Authority is getting a dime less than they got in 2001. It is just saying.
Right, but there's a thing called inflation and sustainability.
Yes,
there are other things that
hello,
need to be
yes,
done.
and I appreciate that, but first and foremost, I think has to be the sustainability of the people paying the bills and paying the taxes.
Wait, am I giving my opinion or am I just fighting you individually? Sorry.
There you go. Go ahead.
So anyway, I'm very concerned about that feature, especially if inflation should take over. I find that somewhat problematic. I also do not want to negatively affect the rental buildings that are going to come up with their negotiations, because there is somewhat of a zero-sum game of the authority has some expenses to maintain our district. So if this group doesn't pay it, then this group's going to pay it. We don't know enough. I don't want to insert in that and inadvertently hurt neighbors. I also haven't lived anywhere in my life where somebody, especially with seniors, could no longer afford where they lived during their working years. Never have I lived anywhere like that.
Except
And
now,
nowhere in any country I've been.
except now,
No,
except
where
now.
they could not afford
Yes.
to stay where they lived. Just what I'm
Except
saying.
now.
This is not different. This is the same. The issue
I
is your
agree with
needs
you.
and your money flows are different during your working years, because usually you have family size and other issues going on. So I wouldn't point to that as something outrageous that's occurring, because that's kind of a universal.
Okay,
And as
finish
far
your
as confiscation, I also want to make clear that confiscation was never mentioned here. What it is if you look at ground leases in general, theoretically, since they have a termination point, just like your lease in an apartment does, it could end at that point, but likely you're going to be offered another extension with different terms. There are many buildings in New York City that are on ground leases, most of them private versus state. But in fact, in London, it's extremely common. And in fact, that's how the royal family makes their money off of the ground that they own and the ground rents. So those were just using general terms of what ground rents in general mean. And that was all that was intended by them. It had no intentions to say anything about the Battery Park City Authority specifically. So I do appreciate, I prefer these, therefore be it resolved statements. And I'm just hoping that others agree with me. A little bit more generic, stay out of the weeds that we don't even understand.
I would be
Thanks.
open to, I'm going to call it a friendly amendment. I do like your first one. The first, therefore be it resolved. I'm fine with that. This is all lovely. So we can incorporate this first one. Let's talk about more with down here, because I think it makes sense too. Let's go down the fair and timely negotiations. Sounds fair. If you want to just be, Lucian, can you scroll up? Not that far. Oh, yeah. Pursue any and implement property tax. Okay, officials of New York, yeah, I mean, within general reason, I'd want to think about it, but yes, these are fine. Therefore be it resolved, and all of this, that's all fine. Let's let other people talk, but thank you. And again, I appreciate all the work you and Jeff and Bob did.
Justine, we have Bob and then Judith for committee members. And then from the public, we have Bob Sack and David Kunkel.
Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that when I first came to Battery Park City, the lawyer who I worked with said really shouldn't sign a lease like that. I wasn't, and the reason I signed it is because I've always had an intrinsic trust in government, and I never imagined that a major deal could happen that wouldn't favor voters and people. And I really think the Battery Park City covenant in Battery Park City actually doesn't favor the people, but rather favors the movement of money. And the proof of that, for me anyway, is the comparison with Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt Island is not severely taxed as we are. They're not expected to send all their money to affordable housing elsewhere. They are not set up with an enforceable commercial form of a lease, which leaves us with confiscation at the end and knowledge of that. And I want to say that I have already been refused a home equity loan on the basis of the fact of the covenant with Battery Park City. And there are other people who can be documented that have had trouble with their applications for finance. I've really noticed I'm looking for apartments now in around the city, And it's clear that Battery Park City properties are losing value already on account of this problem. Pretty soon we won't be able to sell or to gain financing for selling our for our buyers that get financing to sell our apartments to them, and that is going to be a serious problem. And at the and as over time, that's going to get more and more and more and more serious. And so I think that I'm already feeling the heat on this. I'm not the only one. I'm tremendously frightened that I will lose my huge investment in this community as a person and my huge investment in this apartment as a place to live. And so I'm very frightened of that. I'm sure I'm not the only one. That's why we have two major neighborhood groups that are so worried that they want action now. And I think that the whole community has to come together and not close doors as we have over all this time, and not do nothing as we have over all this time, but come together and work together to come up with a resolution which is more like Roosevelt Island, which is more like government working for the people and for home ownership itself, that which creates and maintains a stable community. And that's why affordable owned homes are so vital. We really need a community where everyone can afford where they're living and not have signed up for some bunch of escalation clauses that's going to destroy them. So thank you.
Justine, next is Judith. Then also, I want to make sure that you know that Pat Smith and Marion Braverman are both on the list of the members of the public who wish to
Excellent.
speak.
So let's do Judith. I think that she's the only board member left, right? Because Betty will put her hand down. So let's let's go to Judith, and let's then go to the Pat Smith, Bob Zach, Pat Smith, Andrew, David, and then I don't know who else you said, but I'm gonna let you go in order.
Thanks, Justine, and thanks to my fellow committee members for all the hard work that's going into this. This is a really important issue. Affordability is an issue all throughout New York City. It's not unique to Battery Park City. This committee, as Justine mentioned, has done some work on the rent side. But we do have a unique ground rent situation in Battery Park City, which we're talking about here. And as Justine said, that the effect of the ground rent is that it is rent on top of mortgage and maintenance payments. Obviously pilot, which is in lieu of taxes, but we have to pay rent on top of mortgage and maintenance payments. Now, people that bought in Battery Park City knew this going in, but things have changed. There are these tremendous step ups that are coming. We are in a pandemic. We have lost the SALT deduction and the costs keep rising. In addition to that, there are so many people moving out of New York City, not just in Battery Park City, but all across New York City because of issues with schools. And these rising costs give people more reasons to leave. The schools are undersubscribed due to the pandemic. This isn't good for anyone. And as Justine said, there are people on fixed income that they are going to need to leave. Now, Battery Park City Authority wants to keep all this quiet. And I'm a little bit concerned when I hear about all of these separate hush-hush negotiations. And I understand negotiations are private and there are reasons for that. But there's a lack of transparency here that really works against the homeowners. There's a couple of issues that really work against the homeowners. One is lack of transparency. And that is really in favor of the Battery Park City Authority. Now, Justine will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the Battery Park City Authority is there are only 2 board members that live in Battery Park City. So
That's correct.
As Bob said, we have someone on the negotiating side that doesn't really represent us. And they want to keep everything quiet and pick us off one by one and negotiate building by building. And the other problem is when we do these negotiations, it's at a critical moment. So we have no bargaining power at that point. And I think what Justine is trying to do is put us in a better bargaining situation so that all these negotiations aren't being done at the last minute when the homeowners are in a panic. That creates a very weak bargaining position for us. And when you add on the lack of transparency, it puts us in a very, very difficult situation. I don't agree with the notion that we shouldn't get in the weeds. It's much more dangerous not to get in the weeds. It's much more dangerous to just say, I trust the negotiations that are going on right now. We've been talking about this for a long time. I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road. There are a lot of people that we've all spoken to that may or may not be on this call that are seriously concerned about these issues. A lot of people selling their apartments. We need to work together to control these rising costs. We need to increase transparency. We need to work toward affordability and sustainability, and we need to do something right now. So I support the resolution as Justine has written it. I wouldn't be opposed to some friendly amendments, but I just want to be clear. I think we all want the same thing, which is affordability and sustainability. And as long as we just have trust and we leave it in the hands of others, we lose control. And that's a big problem for us, and we're not going to accomplish what we want to accomplish. I also just want to add that a fellow, a member of the community was trying to put something in the chat function, and the chat function is disabled. So I don't know if there are others that are trying to say something and are unable to.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for pointing that out. Anybody on the call who is writing into the chat, only one who sees it is Lucian. If you have something to say, raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Justine. And that's what I usually, people send something to me, I'll say, just raise your hand and say that to everybody.
All right, so
Okay.
next I think is whom?
Yeah, so we have Bob Zach, David Kungle, Pat Smith, and Marion Braverman.
Let's go in that order, please.
Thank you. I assume, Justine, that I can be heard.
You can be heard. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you. And a lot of very interesting and good ideas have come out this evening. I do want to say that what Betty and Jeff put together in terms of their bullet points and that first resolution are essentially what we have been working at the Battery Park City Coalition, frankly, for nearly 4 years now to
But I'm going to interrupt you. The first thing that I put up, which was like a slideshow, or what's on the screen right now?
What's on the screen right now? Those four extend the ground leases beyond 2069, which is really, when one thinks about it, the crux of a lot of the problems, in addition to the increases in rent, particularly with the way the fair market value reset clauses would work. I use the infamous example of what a fair market value calculation would do to my monthly common charges, and which include ground rent payment for my own apartment at our fair market value reset date, based on the projected increase in value of land in Battery Park City and in Lower Manhattan. But the point is, those are very good goals, and that support would be appreciated, and I think it would send a strong message to the authority. The other thing, Andrew Osborne has been of huge impact and importance in the negotiations with the authority over this time, and we certainly don't want to step on his toes or that of the board of River and Warren in the course of their negotiations. As he's indicated, the points that have been raised with the by the authority have evolved, and that's a good direction. The problem is, as I see it, is that the authority wants to use that settlement with River and Warren as a template for the rest of the members of the coalition. And, ultimately, we do not have a voice in that. It is a lease between River and Warren and the authority, and the board at River and Warren has that responsibility to make sure that it's a fair and appropriate lease for them, and that's completely understandable. The difficulty we will have is then if it is used as a template and if it doesn't work for other buildings, including the older buildings, that creates some problems. But it's, in response to some things that Betty said, yeah, it's interesting in England and in other places that leaseholds are fairly common. They don't work terribly well over there either. As you approach the end of the leasehold interest, in our case 2069, there is a real transfer of value to the lessor, and in our case that's the authority. By the way, they see it the opposite way, that by making concessions to us, we are getting some great benefit and there's a transfer of value to us. That's simply not the case, and that's why we have been negotiating with them to eliminate that 2069 drop dead date. For all the reasons you said, Justine, under the leases, theoretically, the authority can kick out all the owners and take over the buildings and condominiums, tear them down and build something else, or rent them out to somebody else. Leasehold condominiums for residential purposes simply don't work well for this type of reason. When people buy something, they expect to be able to own it and pass it on to their heirs. That's not the way a leasehold is going to allow you to do that. And by the way, that's one of the reasons that it is under the condominium law, you cannot build a residential condominium in New York State on leased property, except in the case of the 4 or 5 specified government agencies that are authorized to offer that, including the authority and so forth. And there are a couple in Brooklyn. There is the ones that we've talked about this evening. So that's a recognition, I think, that the expectation is that government is going to do the right thing ultimately and not throw people out. But we can't depend on that. And frankly, banks don't depend on that when they make assessments about granting mortgages. As has been stated by several people, and I've talked to a number of people, they're having difficulty getting 30-year mortgages now in some buildings. Seniors cannot refinance or get home equity loans now. So we're already starting to see the effect of the unknowability factor as to what people are going to be paying in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years because of the way these leases are structured. So this type of support from the community board, the Battery Park City Committee, is very important to send a message to the authority. And we are trying to work with the authority. We have had, I think, cordial negotiations, but frankly, it has not been enough. We've engaged with political leaders. We've worked with Senator Kavanaugh's office. That has not yet produced the same effect that was produced in 2011 or 2007 and 8, really, when Shelley Silver was involved in the negotiation process on behalf of the Battery Park City Authority, condominiums rather, with Battery Park City Authority. So we have not gained that traction. And as you've mentioned, there is proposed legislation that's being looked at and worked on. I know the Battery Alliance has been very active in that respect as well. So there are a lot of moving parts here, but to get the message across to the authority that we are concerned about affordability, we're concerned about that drop dead date of 2069, and it is important that they recognize that these leases must have a mechanism in them to allow them to be extended automatically. To eliminate the fair market value reset clauses, that's a wonderful proposition. They should be out of all the ground leases. Even the buildings that settled in 2011, 2012 still have fair market value reset clauses in them when their negotiated settlements expire. So they face uncertainty down the road as well. The other thing Andrew started to make some comment about, and I thought he was going to elaborate a little bit, is the sustainability ask from the authority has never been fleshed out. They have never told us, and they've recognized that, and they've candidly, I've had some discussions and we'll be having more discussions with their consultants about this, and our board will as well. But they have not fleshed out what they expect and whether this will be on top of what we are going to be expected to do under the city's Climate Mobilization Act, which is going to be a very substantial ask for most of the buildings, if not all the buildings in Battery Park City, to try to reduce carbon emissions and to try to reduce energy use to avoid fines and penalties. So before the authority can ask us to accept that as a given, they need to flesh out what it is that they expect us to do. I don't think that really belongs in this ground lease negotiation at this point. It really does not, because time is pressing. It's certainly pressing on River and Warren. I don't see, frankly, how they can be expected to include a general acceptance of whatever the authority says on resiliency planning and sustainability without fair amount of detail. And it has also finally been said that it's, you know, we've tried on the coalition side to be very transparent about what we have been doing, certainly among our members, and we count on our members, who are the board presidents or designees from each of the 18 condominiums in Battery Park City, to get the message across to their own residents about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I put that in a monthly newsletter to my condominium owners at the Visionaire, where I'm the president. And different boards will take a different approach. There's no one size that fits all. But on our side, we've been trying to be very transparent. I would agree that there's been less transparency on the authority side, and we need to see more what it is that their goals and objectives are. What are the costs that they need to meet down the road that justify the asks that they have made of us in rent? I've said quite a bit. I appreciate the time, but I mostly appreciate all of the good efforts and great thoughts that all of the folks who have spoken earlier have put together. This is going to be very helpful, I think, and it'll be interesting to hear what Nick has to say as well if he chimes in. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you for making the time to call in tonight. I hope all your business dealings tonight went well. I'm not going to go talk about it, but good for you, and thank you for being here and speaking. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I guess then it's David, and then who else? David.
David's next.
Thank you,
David, I'm unmuting you now. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, first of all, let me say thanks for taking up this very important initiative. I've been here about 20 years, and it's always been in the background in my mind, and what's it mean for our futures down here. So thank you so much for working so hard on it. Justine, I think earlier on you had some slides on some resets in 2007, 2011, and do we have the number of foreclosures by year going back in time? Were there increase in number of foreclosures back during those resets? And the reason I ask it is because I think we're saying that it's becoming unaffordable and it's going to lead to a lot of foreclosures. Was that the case back then?
That was the argument back then. And thankfully, before the resets went into effect, it was changed, and we never had that go into play. So I mean, first answer is no, I do not have the information as to foreclosures or people leaving, whatever else. I can tell you that I lived here back then and was not paying as close attention as now. So, it just was happening. And the Homeowners Coalition, thank goodness for them, because they carried the ball. But we didn't, if we did not have the foreclosures, it's because they moved we never had a reset. They made a different deal to get rid of the resets, to push off the resets for those 12 buildings to 2038 to 2042. And so that's in the future, but not that long from now. And in the deal, they came up with these deal to make parity. So things I've learned is that some ground rent in some buildings are like, I'm making the numbers up, okay? But in some buildings, the ground rent per square foot is $3 per square foot. And in other buildings, it's $10 per square foot. And so what was a concern for all the buildings was, well, I don't want the buildings with $3 per square foot to make a windfall. And the buildings in the $3 per square foot said, but if you do something here, the $9 square foot is going to get a windfall. Don't know, wasn't party to it all, whatever. What they came to was a deal to create parity, to say that at some point in time, I'm going to assume by the 2038 to 2042, but that's an assumption. The increases that they put into place that did not exist before. Okay, so in 2011, when that went into place, there were buildings that had everybody had a different amount of increase per annual increase per month. It changed to the new increases. So some buildings got lower, some buildings got higher, and it was commensurate with how big was your ground lease per square foot. Lower ground lease per square foot, higher rent, higher annual increases and step ups. Makes sense. If you're looking for parity and to bring everybody the highest common denominator, it was a very smart deal. And was a very, it was effective is really what the word, that doesn't mean smart, effective is the word I'm looking for. Go ahead, I interrupted you though.
No, I appreciate that, because I'm in one of the smaller buildings, so I think we have a higher per square rate.
Yes, and I would assume you have a lower increase per month, per year, but I assume, I don't know.
It's hard to say because I don't know what each neighboring building pays. I don't know if that information is available to everybody.
I would love it to be made available to everybody. That would be so important because it would so help. It would add color to when Jeff Galloway says, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the effect is. You're right. I know from conversations with people who've shared little bits of information here and there, but I don't know 100% and I don't know all 18 buildings. So yes,
You wouldn't think that'd be too difficult to put together with some people calling around and maybe get some volunteers from each building saying, hey, what's your square footage? What do you pay? Maybe we can centralize all this data in one place.
David, give your information to Lucian. Let's talk offline and let's see. I have a feeling some buildings will not want to share that information, but they might. Sure. But we can talk about it. I love that idea. It helps give color to the whole conversation. Okay. But go ahead.
And this may be a stupid question, but talking about Roosevelt Island and at the end of the lease where the property reverts back to the homeowners, is that totally out of the question here? Or I know we're trying to extend the lease in 2069. Any possibility of reverting back to the owners?
It's not what our contract says. The contract says that no, it does not revert back to the owners. It reverts back to the authority, and they basically confiscate the property. I don't know how else to say it. Simple words.
No, I realize that, but is it possible to get that out there on the negotiation table, or is it totally out of the question?
Oh, my answer is long term. Yeah, I don't know that I would put it into I'd rather kick the can for 99 more years and talk about it as we're, later down and kick that can. But yeah, would I love to renegotiate that? Sure.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking. You're done? Thank you. Thank you so much. And please give your information to Lucian so we can connect. I think maybe Pat Smith is next, Lucian, but you're in charge.
That's right. That's right. Pat, I am unmuting you now. You're unmuted, Pat.
And thank you to Justine. Thank you to the members of this committee for your very hard work. I am a member of the board of the Homeowners Coalition. The Homeowners Coalition will meet next week and we will discuss and debate some positions. And until we do, I can't speak for the coalition. I'm a member of Battery Point. I'm the president of Battery Point, and I can speak as a condo president and someone who played a role in the last round of negotiations, 2009 to 11. So speaking as a condo president, both of the proposed resolutions you have in front of you are very good, very strong, very needed. Folks, I urge you, please do your duty to the people who live in Battery Park City, resolve it and pass one resolution. Please try and do that tonight. What both of those resolutions do what desperately needs to do. And if I may burden you with just a little bit of history, when 5 of us under the auspices of Shelley Silver went in to negotiate with the Battery Park City Authority in 2009, we sat across the table from the president of the authority, Jim Kavanaugh. part of a Republican administration. And we conducted good faith negotiations face to face with the president of the authority, with his chief financial officer, with his chief legal officer. And yeah, we would put something on the table. They would refer it back to somebody to do a consultant to do some numbers crunching, but we were negotiating with the authority. When there was a change in administration to a Democratic administration, we sat across the table from then President Sherry Hyman, and we continued those negotiations. And even with a change of administration, we wrapped it up in 2 years. And we wrapped it up in 2011, 1 year before what was a possible catastrophic reset. So we weren't into brinkmanship. We weren't into the 11th hour. We wrapped these negotiations up in 2 years. And the package was a total savings of $279 million spread over the 11 condominiums over 30 years. A nice chunk of change. We were able to do that. Current situation, the coalition has been fighting for 4 years, not fighting, trying to negotiate. And with whom are they negotiating? Not with BJ. They're negotiating with a hired consultant who got $400,000 of our ground rent money to not negotiate with us, because the last negotiating session was in February. Bob updated you on that session back in February or March. And the presentation that Justine rolled out tonight, as of last week, that was accurate. So we did not know that there were new developments at River and Warren. We did not know that the authority had scheduled now a new negotiation session with Bob and Zach on Friday. So please, this is all about the way the authority has been acting in bad faith. This is why these resolutions are needed. Now, another track here is Uline New has proposed legislation to achieve what you've laid out pretty much in your resolutions. And it's another track. It's another way that if the authority continues to stonewall, we have a way to get around it. We have a way to get past the 2069 deadline. We have a way to find some kind of acceptable formula to set the rate of ground rent increases. We have a way to stop the authority from imposing conditions as were laid out in the first presentation tonight. And again, now Andrew Osborne now tells us that those conditions may be softened. But we did not know that last week. So, and if they are, that's a good thing. But the other problem is we don't know what's going on with River and Warren. When we negotiated 2009, 2011, we negotiated on behalf of 11 buildings with the authority, and it was transparency, and everyone knew what everyone else was doing. And at the end of the day, the deal was we had to get all 11 buildings to sign on. And yes, there were some differences in the formulas. And yes, we worked through it and we resolved our differences, and we got all 11 buildings to sign on to that 2011 settlement. And so why are we up against such a different obstacle today? Why do we not get to negotiate with the Battery Park City Authority president? You know, we did, two other presidents were willing to come to the table. I don't know why this one is not. So this is why your resolutions are needed. This is why I believe the legislative track is needed to find a way to legislatively resolve this issue. And all this legislation would say, because legislation can't go in to a contract between a condo building and the authority. But the legislation can direct the authority to offer each individual condo building this set of conditions. And we can work with the legislators to work out what those conditions, what those formulas are. So it isn't passed. And the other benefit here is, in the 4 years of attempted negotiations, we have never been able to really involve our elected leaders. In our first round, back in 2009, 2011, Shelley Silver was in from day one, and it moved. This time around, our elected people have been absent. So if they are now willing to consider this legislation, it's a way to engage them, it's a way to bring them in. And we can get to a resolution here and resolve our ground rent issue, then we can turn around with those same electeds having had a good track record and attack Pilot. And remember, I can't urge you enough, Pilot is a different issue. That Pilot is about real estate taxes to be resolved with the New York City Council. Our issue with ground rent, in a perfect world, been resolved with the Battery Park City Authority, but since they've acted the way they do, we have to go to the New York State Legislature to get it resolved. Two different issues, two different audiences, but we still need to bring our elected officials in. And you, I urge you, members of the community board, to see your duty to the residents, the people who live here, and serve us and help us push this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate your comments and your input. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Next, Lucian.
Sure. So now, Mary Ann Braverman, I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I mostly want to comment on what's been said before and support or question it. Number one, I love the idea of transparency. We need to know what's going on. Even as a condominium owner, I have not for years had any feedback and have had to try to drag information out of my own board about what the Homeowners Coalition has actually been doing, supposedly on my behalf. So I'm thrilled to be getting all the information I'm getting this year through the efforts of the community board and this committee. I also think, why should any one building get something better, and I'll put that in quotes, than any other building? Obviously, there's going to be differences based on features of the buildings. A larger building should pay more than a smaller building because there are more people paying in. But why shouldn't it be across the board? That if somebody gets a 0.5% increase, why don't we all? Or maybe we should all have 1% or 2%. Whatever is determined is needed in terms of the dollars and where these dollars are going. I will say, having moved in here in 1982, the first day Gateway opened, and buying my condominium in 87, and living through everything that Justine has described, I feel that there's been a strong commitment by many people to make this a good place to live. And having had this long history, I think that, and I just lost my train of thought, so I'm glancing at my notes on the issue of transparency, that real estate developers made deals in the beginning that then affected all the future increases. And apparently there were lots of different deals made on a lot of variables that may not be fair. And so, and by, well, you'll know what fair means. So I think that the transparency, I support that. I also support collectively approaching our elected officials to get their support on however this is going to work out. And I really know, as Bob said earlier, that a lot of people build equity by owning a home. And the idea that there is an end date in the future, I think the first thing that should be negotiated is an extension, because we're all facing it, and we're all seeing and hearing about people whose values are decreasing because people are fearful of buying in this neighborhood now. And people will be losing more and more equity in their homes if they realize or feel that they can't afford to live here and they need to leave, and they're not going to be able to achieve the value that they anticipated achieving by investing in a home in this neighborhood. So that is all I want to say. Supportive of most of what's happening. And I agree that we should have some sort of resolution from this committee to state some ground rules on how to proceed. So thank you for listening. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne, for your thoughts and for your input. Thanks to everybody who spoke. Nick, is anybody else's hand raised?
I don't believe anyone else's hand is raised.
All right. I want to go and I think it's let's go through. Pretty much there are a lot of pieces of Betty's resolution that I like, and some things that I wish Betty, can you give me I've requested edit access. I won't erase it. I just want to put a strike through it, and then you can all see it, but I don't have edit access. There's just a couple of things I want to change, and then I might want to add in a couple of things, but as far as the whereases, I'm all good. I think that.
Ask
Yeah,
you a question,
please.
Justine?
Yes, you may. Have you seen Betty's thing, by the way?
Oh, of course, she's been very generous about getting it out.
Got
and I think
okay,
it
good.
makes very reasonable sense. I think it's just word editing from almost my point of view between your end point and theirs. But the thing that isn't here is whether or not this is about the strategy, whether or not we're facing this as a community with. I look out my window and I see all these apartment cells. Is every one of those people going to be knowledgeable about this? Are they all going to be involved? Because all of their long-term financial well-being is on the line. And what I feel we're fighting for is that, and we can't get it started soon enough. And the reason you have weeds is because we haven't cut them out. You'll always get weeds if you don't weed. And so, of course, there's going to be weeds, and they're going to grow higher and higher until we can't see a thing. And every day, every week we waste, there's less time to kind of get things done. So this is an election cycle, and it's time to use the election of our election officials and make this an issue for them to confront in the process of debating and running. So that's just my idea, and I like the idea of having all the coalitions and the community board come together in this, and everyone really take the responsibility of educating themselves, because we're the government. We pay the bills, and we're the government in the democratic society.
Yes. No, Bob, thank you. You're right. And what I'd like to do is Nick, do you feel like you need to say something? I don't want to shut you up or not give you the opportunity.
Justine, really quick before Nick, I just wanted to let you know that I saw your request for access. I went ahead and granted that. And then for everybody in the meeting, I put a link in the chat, which lets anyone be a viewer. So you can pull it up on your own screen if viewing it as a shared screen from this WebEx isn't doing it for you.
If I want to knock off like one whereas, if I do that, does it go away, or does it just, you can still see what I'm doing? Because I want to have the conversation about it.
If you want to like do the strike through, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
How do I do that is my question. Oh, tools.
Okay. So
Edit, no.
are you looking at the
I'm looking at the document.
which
and I see a lot of
whereas?
people. Okay, so I'm looking at God, there's no pages on this. It's the whereas that says 2011 agreement should be used as a benchmark. I think that I prefer my 2% and 1% and whatever. I think if we're not agreeing to anything, I think we should just keep this part out.
Okay.
So okay.
I am going to go ahead and I'll do that.
Highlight it or do something so that people can get a discussion about it. But okay, as the chair, I get to go through and say this, right? So I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, you can mark it up and then you can all discuss it.
Yeah. I'd like to just give me a second to do it. In the meantime, Nick, you should have a chance to speak if you'd like to, if someone else is out there, because I know I think a lot of people have stuck up for you, Nick, and addressed some of the things that we didn't know. So I apologize for not knowing, but I'd like to give you the chance to speak.
Evening, everyone. Yeah, I don't want to take away the time of the committee doing its deliberation. So thank you, Justine. I'll try to make it brief. But thanks everyone again, and again for the important focus on this issue. Certainly, going through some of what I saw tonight, I know the initial draft that Betty and Jeff had put together, I think had a lot of things right with it, and not that it's my place to agree or disagree, but those bullets were as they are. I think it would be a very productive resolution because it kind of ticks through the things that we are already actively engaged on with members of the community and with the Homeowners Coalition. So just for the record, for the folks who may be tuning in for the first time, or may have tuned in earlier but have kind of forgotten, because it is kind of not the simplest arrangement. Let me state again for the record that we agree with you all on the fair market value ground rent reset issue. We realize it's a pain point for Battery Park City homeowners, and that's exactly why we are committed to and have been committed to addressing it. It's in our strategic plan. And respectfully, there were some comments made earlier about that we're not transparent, but no, again, I'm going to have to inform folks that that's not true. We talk about this all the time to whomever will listen. I've been on the phone with many of you multiple times. We've been to this committee multiple times. We talked about it here at this committee in January. We talked about it in April when BJ Jones, our president and CEO, and our chief financial officer were here at the committee making a finance presentation. That then turned into a conversation about home ownership. I talked about it last month. I'm talking about it this month. I will talk about it all the time. But Nick, what is it that you're saying? I know that was one of the questions, right? What is it that you're saying? So again, I will say for the record, our goals in working with buildings as these ground rent resets come up are aligned with a lot of the goals stated here, primarily about the fair market value reset, okay? So among Battery Park City's condominium buildings, the average ground rent component that people pay as part of their common charges represents a wide range, right? Different buildings pay different things. We know that we've covered that. We're actively engaged with the Battery Park City Homeowners Coalition and other representatives of other buildings that have the nearest term rent resets, including River and Warren, which we've discussed. Andrew, I know, had weighed in earlier to bring these into kind of better alignment, right? In this way, we want to provide for economic stability for Battery Park City homeowners while ensuring that they're all paying a fair share of relative costs for the use of the underlying land. As Jeff had very astutely noted earlier, again, there's a responsibility here as a public entity to negotiate for the taxpayers of the state of New York. Nobody at the authority is making money here as a result of the ongoing negotiations, right? We are negotiating use of publicly owned land. So the structure for our kind of posture as we work through these ground rent discussions revolves around kind of three public policy goals. Number one, addressing concerns about housing costs in Battery Park City. Okay. We realize that is a pain point again, and we realize that fair market value resets that are scheduled in the agreements that exist, many of which come from 2011 and 2012, are untenable. Okay. In terms of expanding affordability, we've discussed this and touched on it a little bit. It's not really the point of tonight, so I'll make it brief, but beyond what we can do with respect to ground rent, so everyone knows, we don't have any role in setting or calculating or spending pilot, right? Pilot's a separate conversation. Without reduction or elimination of pilot, which is the by far the biggest percentage of what a Battery Park City homeowner will pay each month, almost 50%. We're not going to really make a dent in affordability. I think that's kind of the royal we. The things we can address as an authority, which is ground rent, which is what we have been focused on. Okay, number two, we want to provide economic stability for homeowners who intend to remain in Battery Park City over the long term. This is what we've always said, right? The community is not a community without the people who make it here, who live here, who make it the community that it has always been. Okay? For the vast majority of the homeowners in Battery Park City, ground lease resets are years, if not decades away. We've discussed this, right? It doesn't mean that we're interested in not addressing all the buildings. We can, but we do want to make sure we're focusing on the buildings that have the resets immediately coming up. Okay? Again, for the buildings with the near-term resets, our work incorporates this goal directly. We're working to find alternatives to the fair market value driven resets that are present in most of the Battery Park City ground leases, which we agree, again, are and would be economically untenable. Okay, so as a result, we're working with buildings to kind of devise and propose ground rent structures that would help us both consider the authority's fiduciary responsibilities as stewards of public land and the cost impact on homeowners and building owners. Okay, and number three, fulfilling a financial responsibilities to maintain the neighborhood and to support the city of New York, which, as we all know, the way we're structured is that revenue collected by the authority comes from two primary sources: pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, and the ground rent from the building. Okay. In 2020, and this was in our presentation in April, you can bring up the YouTube that Lucian religiously posts online every month where we discuss this in depth. In 2020, the Battery Park City Authority collected $338 million in total revenue. 274 million of that, or 81%, came from pilot, which again, the Battery Park City Authority has no ability to control. All we do is collect it on behalf of the city, and it goes through to the city. 47 million, or 14% of our revenue, came from ground rent. So, albeit it's not insignificant, but it is certainly a much smaller percentage than what comes from pilot. Nonetheless, since it is what we can control, it is what we are focused on controlling through our work with the Battery Park City Homeowners Coalition and the buildings with resets coming up imminently. So the work continues. We expect the continued conversations to be productive, thanks to the folks who weighed in to kind of correct the record there and let folks know that we are working on. And the last thing I would note is I heard a couple of different comments about the 2011-2012 deal and how they were sitting across the table from the president at the time, but a couple of things are not right. So Sherry Hyman and Sharon, I go back. She's wonderful. She was not here in 2011 and 2012. She wasn't at the authority then. So
He said he was Jim Carrey in 2011, 2012, and then
Jim
later
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh,
Right,
sorry.
well,
Right.
and they might have sat across the table from Sherry, but the last deal was 2011, 2012. Was in 2011, 2012. So if sat across from Sherry, who was here later, that means agreement wasn't reached then, which is exactly why we're working on it now, right? These are complicated issues. But then the other thing I heard is people don't like the 2011 and 2012 deal. So I'm trying to make sense of the fact that you liked it, but because you were able to sit across from the table from people, but now you don't like it, which is why it needs to be changed because the buildings agreed to something that now they don't like. I get it. Bottom line, fair market value resets are problematic. You recognize it and want to change it. We recognize it and want to change it. And we're committed, as we have been, to continue working with all of you in a productive manner to address it for the long-term viability of Battery Park City and the people who call it home. So thank you. Sorry I was so long.
No, thank you, Nick, and thank you for being patient and saying what you said. I think that as I've gone through this, as you were talking, I think I pulled out, and we can wordsmith it now. So, I mean, Lucian, can people see what I changed or added or didn't add? And I'm trying, it's still so difficult to do it in real time. I'm not one who.
Well, yes. So I see the strike through, and then there's a whereas that maybe had something deleted. I don't know if that's
Yeah, that is. It was about using. 'Cause it doesn't. I don't know how to strike through. It didn't make me strike through. So I'm called. Oh, maybe there was a thing here. Sorry, I did delete it. But I also did other stuff. So if you push like undo, you're going to get rid of everything.
Yeah. So why don't you just walk us through what you changed?
Okay, so I think what I changed here is something about relying on the format or the structure of the 2011 agreement. And I am opposed to that. I believe that that agreement was focused on parity, which is fine, and it was good, and it was what was needed at the time. But I think what's needed now is focus on affordability and sustainability in place. And, aging in place or growing, whatever, staying here, affordability and maintaining affordability now for the people that live here now. And I think that any attempt to create parity that bring, which is, and as Jeff said, that they're taxing us, they want the money. The government, everybody wants the money. So the parity will not be bringing everybody to the lowest common denominator in terms of costs and payments. It will be bringing everybody to the highest common denominator in terms of payments. And I am not okay with that. I want affordability to be the goal and the first and foremost in everybody's mind. And that's the point of what, from my perspective, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I heard from pretty much everybody. And I really don't think River and Warren would challenge that as a sentence, as a goal. The specifics of how we get there, I don't know. And they don't want to share. People are not, the transparency is not for me to know or us to know. But at the end of the day, I feel as if I took it out, and I'm sorry I erased it. I'm really trying to pay attention and figure it out. But up here, you can't see what I'm doing. But up here, the comment part here is where I should have done it. But anyway, that's what it said. And Betty, I bet you have it someplace else. I probably have it someplace else because it's part of what you sent me before too. But I would not want that in there. I don't want to recreate the 2011 agreement. I want our focus to be not parity this time, but affordability.
I just want to know what was excluded, what was deleted.
Yeah, I have to find it someplace
It
else.
had nothing to do with parity. It was according to the Homeowners Coalition. They've been excluded from having a voice.
No,
on
I
shared
didn't erase
issues.
that one. I didn't erase that
Yes,
one.
you did.
Oh,
That's what's missing from this particular location. I have a printout.
okay, good. What does it say?
It says in this particular location, you can see right here, the whereas with nothing after it. According to the Battery Park City Homeowners Coalition, they have been excluded from having a voice on
Got it.
shared issues.
Sorry.
Well, I think they've actually
crossed out. But I think that they're saying that they're not excluded, is what they're
so
saying
it may be
now.
worth taking that out anyway, even if you didn't.
Yeah, that's why I took it out. I'm sorry, Betty. I'm sorry. You're right. The one that I was talking about is what Lucian struck out up here, up a little higher. But yes, you're correct. I did take that out because from Nick and from the gentleman from River and Warren, plus Bob Zach, plus I believe even Pat Smith said that they are negotiating with everybody now, allegedly. So I think as long as we can make some sort of I don't want to say they're not negotiating if they are, but maybe in the therefore be it resolves, we say that in negotiations with everybody continue, which you may already have in here. Yeah, you talk about fair and timely negotiations. So I leave it to you to put that in the whereas part, to say, hey, we want to hold your feet to the fire to keep doing what you say you're doing. But I don't want to have in the body of this the smashing of them if we don't have to. But I open that up to the committee. Anybody have, and I can't see the chat. I can't see hands, Lucian. So
I'm fine with that. Just speaking for myself.
Yeah. Pipe up, anybody, and say something, because I'm fine with that too.
So you have Bob and Betty with their hands up.
Okay, please speak. So Betty first, and then Bob. Betty, are you muted? Or if you're.
Excuse me, I was going to talk to what was crossed out.
Oh, okay. Well, let's finish this one first, and then let's go to the crossed out one. Bob, you have something to say about the negotiations? Bob, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I'm back. I just want to have you get through this, and then I just want to make my wait a minute moment here, because I feel ethically responsible for saying something.
Yep, go ahead.
Betty.
I'm taking myself off camera because I can't hear. I think it's my bandwidth. Oh, Bob, wait, so you're speaking, Betty, or no? You're saying Betty should go?
Betty should go.
Okay, because I was going to talk about the part that was crossed out, but in
let's go
response
there,
to Justine's,
Oh.
since you wanted to cover the part that was eliminated completely.
Yeah, first let's do that, then let's go to this one. And you got the.
Then I would keep the very end of it, because you're right, now they're in negotiations. But
Okay.
to say that the Battery Park City Homeowners Coalition still has a vested interest in the negotiations of River and Warren. because
Yes.
it's likely to become a template for all the other buildings that have appraisal date negotiations.
I agree with that, and yes. Lucian, Betty, you just get us those words so Lucian doesn't have to type in while he's doing this, but yes, I'm so sorry I erased it. I'm an idiot with this
Yes,
stuff.
no, I will get that so that at least covers
Yes,
that part and get rid of the first part since we know that's changed.
perfect. And then, okay, now let's go to the crossed out part.
This one that's crossed out, I would not cross out any of this. The reason being, it being a benchmark, I know you're opposed to. The fact is, this is the rationale for getting rid of the fair market value formula in the buildings leases of the 6 that remain. And since that is what you need, whereases that are backups to the therefore be it resolved. So removing this means you then take one of the most important points that everyone has spoken about in negotiations as being important to them. So I wouldn't undermine.
I don't think, I guess I hear you. I will find something someplace else to make a suggestion for someplace else. I fear that this brings us to a conversation about parity because that's what that agreement was about. And using it as a benchmark will get us into a deal because that's the goal that will accomplish parity. And parity will not.
Parity, what's wrong with parity? Because in fact, the
Parity,
ones
nothing's wrong.
negotiating are higher up, so they have
Well,
less to lose.
Except they're not in a vacuum because as I think Jeff said, or somebody said, I forget who, somebody said, robbing Peter to pay Paul, somebody's left holding the bag. Part of why it's really important to be everybody together is because we all make the deal and everybody is on the same page.
Yes, so parity is the only thing that allows us moving towards shared responsibility.
There is
Perhaps
shared.
proportionate to
My distinction is, well, again, I disagree because the agreement in 2011 brought the parity and brought everybody up instead of bringing everybody down. I think this would be where we're having a discussion. This is weeds on parity versus something else. It's also then goes to where I'm talking about. The distinction is really, truly, by going to, yes, 100% fair market value, the resets have to go. No one is arguing about that.
And this is support for doing that.
It is and it isn't. We're just asking for it. Just because it was done before doesn't mean they'll do it again. And just because we asked for it before, we say they did it. It shouldn't be used as a benchmark if we just say that they did push it down. And I think somewhere in here you say it. I can't swear.
I think that I agree with Justine in terms of the concept of parity because we're sort of making demands right now. We're not talking about what we want of each other, right? So I think Betty's point is we want parity amongst ourselves, but that's not what this resolution is about. This resolution is about getting affordability from the Battery Park City Authority. So I think Justine is right to take out that concept.
Yeah. I mean, I just
But
think
Because you know, I'm voting against it then. And I'm one of the few, I'm the only person from building that's affected. So I think it's a very negative thing to do.
Well, then Betty, do me the
It's
favor.
not
Tell
supported by
me-
the speakers.
Do me a favor and tell me, no, I know I do have it, but I have a question. Well, we'll have to talk about this offline. I need to know what it is in asking for parity that benefits the 6 buildings. I don't understand why the 6 buildings think they're better off by themselves, but this is not the conversation to have here. This is the conversation that we should have, and I'd love to have it with the Homeowners Coalition and other condo boards. And this is the kind of transparency. It doesn't mean we have to sit down with the Battery Park City Authority, but we should sit down with ourselves and have a transparent conversation to say, hey, where is everybody? What's going on? What has been done? What do we want? How do we all work out together? And how do we go for affordability? Because at the end of the day,
Yes, because we want to get rid of the FMV just like the other 12
yes,
got
exactly. Everybody wants the FMV gone. The
to. And
question
that's
is,
what this says.
yes, it does, but it also references the word parity, and I have a problem with parity. So I want that piece to go. I'm sorry if you disagree with the whole thing because of that one clause, but this is just as much weeds, unfortunately, as when I was talking about the rent stabilization guides and the 2%, whatever else, because at the end of the day, perhaps by going with those as the way going forward, maybe that's not getting in parity. I don't have enough information to answer that question, which is why I agreed to take a step back from that. I have a lot of information, but I don't have the ability to share. It's not my information to share. But, and that said, it's not even 100% information, so it's not valuable. So I don't know where that falls and how that makes it makes no parity, whatever else in terms of fairness going forward. But I can tell you that to me speaks to affordability for everybody. So
Could I do a follow on to one of the earlier objections about
Yeah.
transparency? I think that 2011 agreement, I've been educating myself on this for a long time, because I think signing the agreement to buy this was one of the major mistakes I made in my life. And I think that I really have compassion for everyone else, because I don't want to see all the wailing and gnashing of teeth that'll come of having signed that agreement. In any case, I feel like that 2011 agreement was not negotiated under anything like transparency, and there was no way I could get in the inside ring to even learn anything about it. And even with pumping people for 10 years since then, I only started to learn things recently because we're a little closer to the fire again. So I think that the form of the negotiation of that was a 3-man in the room style thing, even had one of the 3 men in the room in the negotiation, and it was not in the interest. There was someone who even mentioned how they're a resident and they had nothing to do with the coalition. They're a homeowner and resident, but they don't get any voice in it. They don't get to hear anything. They don't get any place at the table. So I'm saying that the community belongs right in the middle of the weeds, and that we have 3,000 at least homeowners here, and everyone, if they care about their own investments and the investments in their children and in the next generation, they really should start caring about this now, because the more time that passes, the more damage is done. And what was settled in parity, in my opinion, created damage for me and everybody else.
Well, it created damage, but it also created benefit. The fair market value rents, reset values got kicked away. That was the benefit that everybody got in the 2011 agreement. And I understand, Betty, that's your point of this. Whereas, basically, the gain of that 2011 agreement was that the fair market values resets were pushed away, and that's exactly what you want to happen with the 6 building, in the north now, as does everybody else. We want yours to go away, and we want all to go away. So we are on the same page with that piece of it. I think that there's got to be a way, and I would be open to a suggestion to say, whereas, and I don't know if I've said it someplace else, so I will be happy to have you make a suggestion, Betty, without equating it to the 2011 agreement, or just equating it to a benefit to all from the 2011 agreement was that the fair market value formula was pushed off into the future. The detriment to all, among other things, was that it was not eliminated totally. A sentence like that would be okay, because that accomplishes your goal of mentioning it, equating the fair market value formula discussion to the agreement, acknowledging that it did accomplish that goal of pushing it away. So it would help, if nothing else is accomplished for the North, if they just take their fair market reset value and throw it 30 years in the future, that will be a benefit to the North. I don't want that to be the only thing that happens, but that would be a benefit. So I think the way I just said it, which I can't even remotely repeat, might accomplish both and make us both happy. Robin, you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, as a resident of the South, we actually paid more relatively to other buildings. And
Yes,
the agreement that I signed up for was destroyed and advantaged those other buildings. So the beginning of the rift of unfairness was set into place from my point of view, and I've been paying it already for a decade. And so I don't think that's right. I'm not the only one in this building, Liberty Court, that's been paying that for a decade. You too have been paying that. So that wasn't fair. That was part of this agreement, and that's why I strike it out too.
So part of why I have a vested interest, but I'm willing to let it go for this resolution because we do need more information. But I have a vested interest in item 2 about capping the annual growth for all buildings is because exactly what you said. I don't want parity. Parity has increased my costs, but I'm not supposed to talk with my costs. Anyhow, Robin, you wanted to speak.
Yeah,
I
first,
agree with you, Bob. Go ahead, Rob.
first of all, thank you so much for all your hard work, Justine and Betty and Jeff and Bob. It's really amazing. I just wanted to ask for clarification because I think I'm missing something. Can you comment, Justine, on the parity issue problem?
Mm.
Can you explain it? You know,
Well,
why it's
okay,
objectionable?
why is it an issue? Someone who's smarter than I might want to weigh in, and I call
You're
on
very smart,
well,
Justine.
no, I call on people to listen because at the end of the day, when I say that parity isn't the goal for now, it doesn't mean
Right.
it shouldn't have been the goal for then. I was not at the
Right.
table. I don't know. I was an owner then, but I was not part of it all.
Got it.
However, as Bob said, the effect for people in some buildings who had a lower per square foot ground rent assessment, whatever, it was lower ground rent, okay? Part of why I bought in the building that I bought was because the ground rent was so low, or the whole thing was so low, and in part it was because the ground rent was so low. To me, that was a better value. It meant I paid more money to buy the apartment, but it also
Right.
meant my monthly payments were less.
Oh.
When the deal was met, and you know, shame on me, shame on Bob, shame on all of us. Did we pay attention to the fair market reset and understand what that meant? Not really.
Well, it was fairly obscure, I have to say.
I mean, but shame on us. We were not aware. So that was a
I
catastrophic.
don't think it's a shame on us. I think it's a shame on them because I
having
fought
it
to
in
get in the
place.
front row of that. I didn't
Right.
have a chance to do that.
No. I'm
And
not
not
talking
having
about
a-
the deal. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the deal now, Bob. I'm talking about the resets themselves, the fact that they existed. And we all each faced it in 2000, whatever it was, 9 to 11. And that 2011 deal saved us. And as it said here in this resolution that Betty wrote, and I think I pointed it out, and Bob Smith, Pat Smith said it, it saved collectively, and it did benefit Liberty Court in this regard. We would have had to pay a huge chunk, we would have had a 25% increase back then, plus or higher fair market value increase back in 2011. So we were facing some increase.
Right.
What I think that you're complaining about, and fairly I would complain about, and I am, I'm gonna turn my video off because I think I'm losing bandwidth. What I think you're complaining about is the fact that because we had such low ground rent to begin with, and not just us, other buildings in the South had low. They looked at, well, we can't get rid of your fair market reset and get nothing for it. We need to have you charge more, and we need to put into play, and somewhere along the line, in exchange for kicking the fair market reset value 30 years in the future, there was a deal made that people had to come to parity to the highest level. So if the highest level was $9 per square foot, over the period of again, now I'm assuming it's 30 years, but over a certain period, everybody had to get to $9. So from 3 to 9, you have to jump it up. How are they going to do that? Well, the buildings that are at 3 are going to come up at 3%, 3%, 3%, have step ups. And then other buildings who are at 4% are going to come up at whatever it is. And then blah, blah, blah. And then the buildings that are at 9%, well, they're not going to stay static, but they're going to increase at maybe 1% or 0.5%. And so that eventually the lower ones will catch up to the top ones. My problem is the fallacy of that premise. You want parity, bring everybody down to 3. Don't
Right.
go to 9. That's where I'm coming from. But that's a negotiation. We're not making a negotiation. This resolution is not making a negotiation. We are just saying we want something to be done. We need the fair market sets to go away, and we need to have some semblance of a purpose moving forward. I understand that maybe in the negotiations in the north, in the 6 buildings in the north, I have no idea, by the way, where they stand. I don't know what their ground rent, are they 3? Are they 9? Are they 15? I have no idea. I have no idea what their annual increases are. So when Betty talks about, and Jeff too, I don't have information. I don't have information. I don't know. So I don't know where parity would be, and I have no idea if this is my idea of 1% is a bad deal for them going forward. Maybe it's worse. Maybe they're the ones that are at 0% or 0.5%. So 1% is a bad deal, or the Rent Guideline Stabilization Board, annual increase is a bad deal. I don't know. I didn't think that was the case because I was a little bit ignorant and I only knew the people who were complaining to me. But that said, I don't want to have anything in here that's pushing for parity.
Right.
I'm
Understood.
looking, so that's where I'm going, and that's where I'm going, Betty. But certainly to reference that 2011 amendment as a guide to getting rid of the fair market reset without it was successful in doing that. I don't know why we have to reference it because it was unsuccessful as far as I'm concerned in other things. And yet it achieved parity. It saved everybody all across the board. It benefited every single building at some point. So there's no way to say that that deal did not benefit every single building. It did.
And yeah,
But what it created was an unaffordable situation now for many people. And again, but mostly the middle income, the senior and the fixed income people. That's what it's created for. Some people who are very rich, it's just an annoyance. People, but not everybody in Battery Park City or Manhattan or Lower Manhattan are rich. You got a lot of middle income people. You got a lot of people who are on fixed incomes, and you certainly have a lot of seniors who I assume are on fixed income, but I shouldn't assume. Anyway, did that answer your question?
yeah, it did. Thanks so much, Justine.
Thanks, Robin. Betty or Brunson, you've been playing with this. Have you been able to kind of fix it up a little bit?
I'd like to just kind of see exactly which statement you want me to fix up, and then because I don't want to mess with ones that you guys are okay with. So if we could just just zoom in on a whereas or therefore, and I'll work on it.
Okay, so go. I think the therefore be it resolves are all fine. Actually, I have no issues. It's the whereases, which is so silly, but it's not silly in the sense of it's worthwhile. Everybody has opinion, but so I think these are all fine and true. This one. So Betty was having a problem with this one, and let's see if we can come to an agreement where we mention the fair market formula going away because that is of huge impact, and we're demanding that lower down. But I don't want to.
Sorry, what about instead of using the word benchmark, use the word guide? Because the whole point of it is to get rid of, as they did, get rid of the fair market value formulation.
If you want, but you really want, should be used as.
How about something a little more generic, which would along the lines of the concept. Maybe this is not English. What I'm about, but the concept of the 2011 agreement of replacing the FMB formula with a schedule of fixed increases should be used as a guide for negotiating resets in the remaining 6 condo buildings. Or should be carried over.
Yes, but that's not that wouldn't be a correct. Okay, type that, Lucian. Go ahead, because we'll work from there.
Or how about phrasing it slightly differently?
Because it wasn't replacing the
well, okay, so here's
but that's fine, but that's easy. That will fix, that's the least of our problems. That's we can fix that later. That's not, I don't think we're arguing about that. But this,
well, I guess maybe I'm bad at drafting on the spot, unfortunately, tonight, but the concept I'm trying to convey is rather than get us all wrapped up in the word parity or the details of the 2011 agreement that we may want to
How about,
relitigate.
I would say,
uh,
whereas
It's a
one,
references a precedent for substituting, schedule of fixed increases for the fair market value formulas or something.
why
like
do we
that.
need that? I mean, I don't quite understand why we would need that, because it's not a precedent. If
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think
no. And I guess what I'm saying is it's not, it's a precedent to continue the status quo. And we're trying to change the status quo. That is what that's what everybody's asking for, is to change the status quo.
No, my contract says FMV. So I'm asking that it go against that in my contract. And so I am using the precedent of what they did, what the authority agreed to in 2011.
Because you're hung up on us asking them to renegotiate a contract or break a contract, and I have no issue with breaking a contract.
No, I
I'm
don't
not,
think that's what Betty's saying.
I'm renegotiating.
Oh yeah, we renegotiate, but I have no issue with renegotiating, and I don't know that we need a framework, because that framework achieved parity but did not achieve affordability. So I mean, unless you want to, if you want to say that, you can say that. You want to say the framework of kicking the can of the framework of values with the schedule of renting increases achieves a goal. I'm not going to say whose goal, but a goal of parity among the buildings.
Look at what Lucian wrote, which isn't as strong as I would have done it, and I would have kept the words, but it's a 2011 framework of replacing the fair market value with a schedule of rent increases the 2011 framework of replacing FMV with a schedule of rent increases is instructive and may serve as a useful conversation point in future negotiations.
As long as, if you can add, as long as affordability is the goal of those negotiations.
And also, we also have to
Well,
make
that's a
sure that
different
there's
place. It's a different-
transparency.
Yeah, that's a different
No,
place.
but the thing is, if this is a framework, it's a framework
Oh,
both in terms of what results it's trying to achieve and the methodology that reached it. And I don't necessarily agree that my goal in life at that point in time was replacing FMV.
I don't know if it was or it wasn't, because I didn't understand it back then. But yeah, I don't know. So, but also,
And what I'm saying is there was no way for you to come to understand it back then.
correct.
And so throwing the whole thing out and starting over makes the best sense to me.
I
It's
kind of
fine
agree.
to talk about the history and to what extent there were some savings, but the exact methodologies and the whole manner of savings or the whole manner of the negotiations was flawed fundamentally.
I agree. I mean,
Take that up with your
I mean,
2011 board.
but yeah, I don't want to. I'm not gonna. Right, I don't want to do that. Okay. Let me say let me think about this. I don't know if they replaced fair market value. They
did.
No, they didn't, because we have the fair market value schedule, and they just pushed it back. We have them coming up again in
Correct.
2020.
But Justine, you just said a
We
few
have it
minutes
coming
ago
up
that
now.
that would be a laudable accomplishment if that happened for the other 6 buildings.
No, I do not think it would be a laudable accomplishment. I think it would be something that they're going to shove down our throats or their throats.
That's
Or
because
not
you
be
don't
laudable.
live in one of the 6 buildings.
Betty, come on. I'm trying to help everybody here. I am not looking at this. I mean, I have done nothing but look at this as a communal effort. Of course, the whole point here is I'm ready to call a rent strike until they get rid of this. Okay.
Let's
Having
not
said that, I mean, but let's get real here. I'm not looking to have you guys thrown down the river to pay the fair market value. And the fair market value was not replaced for anybody.
But you are.
It was, no, I'm really not. You think that might be an end goal because, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're wrong. I'm sorry. That's not what I'm going for.
But none of that matters on a resolution.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct.
Let's put a placeholder with what Lucian wrote here and look
But then we have
at
to
what
keep
our
going
be it
back.
resolved actually asks for. Our be it resolved says eliminate the F&B reset
Yeah.
clauses, except perhaps as a cap, and replace it with a fixed schedule or fixed percentage increase of buildings ground rent. We don't say kick the can down the road, we say replace it. That's what we're asking them to do.
I don't. Okay, that's fair. But I
And
wouldn't
all the
say.
whereas
me
says
see
is
what it
back
says
in
about the
2011,
cap. Let
we
me
did
read that.
something similar that may be instructive and starting point, but it's not the ending point because we want to eliminate them.
I will tell you that if they create a deal like they did in 2011, it will not preserve affordability in Battery Park City.
Well, we can only get the best deal that can be got.
Oh, yes.
It's not perfect, it's not perfect.
You know what though, Jeff? If you don't ask for it, you're never going to get it. So let's
We are
go
asking for it, but Justine, we are asking for it. That's
Mm.
what the resolution says. Eliminate the FMV reset clauses. That's what we're asking for.
So let's go down and then say what else we say about it. Let's just put that. I would like to say eliminate the FMV clauses, period. And if we're not going to get into the weeds of what we're going to, if we're going to talk about, now I got a problem with talking about a schedule of rent increases unless we're going to tell them what we want as the rent increases. And I'm going to tell you that what I want as the rent increases, and I've heard from a lot of different people, I want the set to the rent guidelines board. I don't want them to come up with a figure, and I don't want them to come up with different.
Well, the rent guidelines board is historically more than the 3%, but yeah.
At the lesser of. And I don't believe that because nothing increases as for rent stabilized apartments.
I had leases under my rent stabilization that was 5%, 8% in the early 2000s.
I'm going to look that
depends
up.
on who's the mayor.
If that's the case, then the Battery Park City Authority is going to be doing darn well, isn't it? Rent stabilized apartments, and it's focused on people who are living with, they're not. I don't know what to say. I would prefer that. If we're going to get into anything else besides getting rid of, replacing, eliminating is the word I want. I want eliminating the fair market value. That's the word I want.
Also keep in mind that these be it resolved came almost word for word from the Homeowners Coalition's PowerPoint.
I understand that, but the Homeowners Coalition is not the only entity that we're talking about. They are a piece of the entity, and they're meeting again, and that was in May, and that PowerPoint, apparently there are things in it that have been updated and moved and changed. So
well, Bob
I
said
think
tonight that the schedule of increases was something that he would support, but
what schedule of increases is my
I
concern.
was going to call and talk to Andrew Wasborn. He's waiting to speak because talk to the people
Go ahead,
this really
Andrea.
applies to.
Yeah, because I can't see. Go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew.
Guys, I can answer every one of these questions going back to 2011. We've been working on this. We have every number for every building down to every dollar.
Oh my God, you're amazing.
So any questions you have, I'll spend the next 3 hours with you, and I'm 7 hours ahead of you in the Middle East. So
oh my
what
gosh.
questions do you have about this? Because I'll answer them for you.
My question to you.
Let's start with parity. So the whole
Parity,
concept
yes.
at the time was the guys at the time looking into a way below market rent set in a recession that was then super discounted. The deal in 2011 was a great deal. It was also done with the knowledge of every board who was supposed to be disseminating to every unit owner in every board.
That.
So let's start there. So the concept of parity, of getting everyone to the same note, was so that when you came up in 2040, you were already at the same ground rent value, which is
so
already
that everybody. So question, because I'm stupid, Andy. Wait 1 second. So when that says the same ground rent value, so every building would have been at the same land value.
Yes.
Which explain to me
So
what that
what
means.
they're trying to do is they were trying to get everyone on the same land value, so you didn't have individual conversations about land value. You keep it simple, stupid. And so what they did is they set a tone. And again, you got to remember that these leases have been negotiated originally over a span of 25 years in up cycles, down cycles. Some people prepaid, some people didn't prepay, some people had 421A. They were trying to do their best fist, and their best fist was, and everyone involved on both sides was, how do we get everyone to the same approximate land value so that that is mute? And all we're talking about is reasonable, off a reasonable basis. And again, so what the authority is trying to do now, and in our conversations with them, is, look, it makes sense for us to be somewhat aligned with the previous thing. And without getting into negotiation strategy, the other thing you guys are missing is they only negotiated rent. If you want to make reference to it, say, we would like to make reference to purely a discussion of base rent, not sustainability, not other things that they're trying to bring to bear, or not we're going to open up the lease and throw things off. The reason for having it be the same framework is concentrate on rent and make it fair and reasonable. And on your concept of affordability, just have it as a different whereas. It's a modern concept. If they're opening up leases, let's raise the concept of, it was never in the original documents in 1971. The word affordability never appeared. It was the creation of households, which is why we can sneak middle income into it. And we've got to think about the politics of middle income, and I'm sure you have, but let's just say middle income is okay enough. So the whole concept here is, you know, let's say, look, it's unequal public policy for you to do one type of deal for one group and then come later on the same style of deal and do something else. So the framework is healthy, but I go back to the other point. It's all we're trying to figure out is a schedule of rent, and that schedule of rent can be zeros. All we're saying is a schedule of rent. We don't have to say increases. We're just saying schedule of rent, which is reasonable and fair and is, you know, community based. And I think so we're somewhat getting there, but that's
words. I would take those words. 2011 framework of replacing, if that's the word you think makes the most sense, fair market value with a schedule of rents that is reasonable. What'd you say? Reasonable, fair, whatever the heck you said.
Yeah, that is equitable. In line with or whatever.
Yeah, I think that
we're not going to say we're not going to say affordable there.
I don't know how
I'd like to
you,
throw affordable in there too.
Frame affordable for those without opening up other people's leases, and so that's not a realistic expectation to go back and open someone's lease.
Fair is
so as I think
subjective.
about the negotiation, it's getting us to a point.
Fair is completely subjective and gets us nowhere. I mean,
because at the end of the day,
of course, the Battery Park City Authority is saying this is fair. Everything's fair. 8% flip tax is fair.
But if we could, Lucian, did you hear what Andrew said?
I'd like to just hear that and type that out.
Let's type it out and then let's look at it. But Judy, thank you. I'm liking your point. So say it again, Andrew.
But
again, the framework for me is to concentrate on ground rent only. It's to create, to replace FMV with a schedule of rent that is equitable amongst the community stakeholders or something like that.
Well, I would say equitable.
That's the parity.
That is parity. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and
no,
equitable.
The word is affordable. That's what we're looking for.
Let's
ask for what we want.
But that's a concept that's never been introduced. I mean, I
understand that.
But this is what we're asking for.
Never in the framework.
We're doing it now. That's what
we're asking for.
That's what we're asking for now.
We're making it a separate whereas.
Mr. Osborne, could you just, there's a little bit of crosstalk in the very beginning. Could you just do the very first part of it that led to the replace FMB?
Whereas the 2011 framework of replacing the FMB, right?
With a revised schedule of rent to be equitable or reasonable and again, you're negotiating, so you're trying to set, because again, but even volunteering any increase, you're saying we understand that you need to see your incomes rates. I get that. But you've got to give us something that we can negotiate, even if you want to take a much more polarized view. Those of us on the ground are negotiating it. Look, there's got to be a strategy at some point between CB1, the Alliance, and the Coalition. And this is incredibly helpful and instructive to this, but it needs to be helpful.
I will tell you that I don't understand how asking for something to be affordable is not in the best interests of all the 6 buildings.
I totally agree. Justine, I completely agree. It'll be great that we can get affordable in. I just don't think it's going to make it all the way in, but it's good to put it as a polarized point. And I'm for it. So, and not that I have a role in your board.
No, that's fair. I mean, you know what? As Betty said, you're giving her support for the North. I think what's just boggling my mind.
Guys, it's not just the North. Of the 6 buildings that come up, it includes
that's true. There's some south. Yeah,
it's not just the North.
You're right. It's
some of the people with the lowest numbers are people like the Ritz and so on. So, we're trying. There's a broad in operating for 18 buildings. There's going to be wide variations, and so we're trying to fix some of those in an appropriate way, but still at a discount.
I suppose what it comes down to, Lucian, you keep typing in because nothing I'm saying is going to be in the words here. What I'm trying to get across is that I'm not looking to see if you have 3 raisins or I have 2 and somebody has 5. I just want to keep some raisins. And I want to keep the people who live here now here. And there will be people who are living here now who could pay the fair market value increases 5 times over, and they could still stay here. And will it be annoying? Sure, but they could do it and they could still stay here. What I'm trying to do is help the neighbors who live here, own their homes, who can't pay it and who
Totally
can't
agree. And that's
afford
been
the
our view
increases.
all along.
And that is the point. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm advocating to that level, and everybody else who's on top of that level should be benefiting from that. Because if they've got the money to pay the other stuff, they're happier. That's good. I've made a deal for the lower stuff. And again, I made a deal. I'm arguing, not even making a deal, because I have no power to make a deal. The community board has no power to do anything. We have power to ask for something. And if they listen to us, anybody, and that's great. But I am not going to be okay with aiming low. And so as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned, it's
Justine,
aiming low.
I have to strongly agree with you. First of all, what's in there right now asks for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It says that instead of fair market value, we want an increase that's called something else.
Yeah.
And that's equal among us. That's not what this resolution
I
is
don't want it
about.
equal among us. I don't care.
No, but can I finish? Can I finish?
Yeah, please.
Can I finish? I understand the homeowners association is in the middle of negotiations and they want to appear reasonable. And that's fine. But that's not what this is about. We're not coming into the negotiation from a middle point. We're asking for what we want to ask for. And they're asking for what they want to ask for. And I understand the point. Okay, River and Warren started out with, they started out with negotiating. The Battery Park City Authority started out negotiating high, and that's how negotiation is done. They start there. They start at their 8% flip tax and whatever else they want. And we start at a point of affordability, and we come together somewhere in the middle. But this resolution is not about us coming in the middle and negotiating against ourselves. It's about us asking for what we want. What we want is affordability. At the end of the day, is that going to happen? It's unclear. We may meet in the middle somewhere. It may not be affordable for some people, but we have to at least start there.
And I'm okay with that. And that serves a purpose for everyone.
I think so too. And I think that, which is why I think that this whole part of it here doesn't make sense. I don't want to reference back to it because that was not the goal. And I'm not saying the goal was bad in 2011, but that affordability was not the goal in 2011.
So why not keep it short and sweet and talk about a framework that replaces FMV with a schedule of rent, and that's neutral, and then say, which takes into account the affordability on a look forward basis.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I'm good. Yes, perfect.
Or future affordability. Let's keep it short and sweet.
No. Yeah.
And then you don't need the rest of it. It's short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
The other thing to remember, though, the whole point of the framework is it only dealt with rent. So if you want to say 2011 framework that focused on only replacing, and then you're not allowed, saying you can't bring all these other new things in because that wasn't brought in the other negotiation.
I understand. I don't know that I want to have the other, I mean, again, we'll see. I'm not on the negotiating committee. I want all these things discussed and addressed. Maybe not in this conversation, but they have to be addressed because even the buildings of these six.
Justine, I think the point is, and I may be missing the point, but I think if those extra asks by the authority are not negotiated here, they're going to have a hard time coming back in a year or two and saying, okay, now we want to step up. I think that's the argument, but I may be getting it wrong.
That's the argument from their point of
Which
view.
should be negotiated here. They're saying don't talk about it here, right?
So it shouldn't be. If it's not negotiated here, it's not part of the package, period, and it's off the table. I think that's the
Except
idea.
it's not off the table. Those other things and those sustainability things, for local law 11, that's not the BPCA. That's the city and the state that are forcing, that requiring that. And those are things that we are going to have to spend. Everybody has to spend. That is a cost that's going to have to be incurred. And as homeowners, we're going to have to incur it ourselves as the rental buildings are going to, as My better
On
half
the
is in the
besides,
background.
you bring that argument up when you talk about the extension and you talk about the change in economic value. So if you BPCA in effect own half of my unit, you should be at some point paying half of my ongoing costs. And you raise that when you do the next discussion, which is on the renewal of the lease.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But guys, if you have any other questions about the history of this deal or the history of what was done, I can answer those questions. And you don't need to run around and find the data. We already collated the data primarily from public sources like the bond documents. We have it down to the dollar. Don't recreate the wheel. We can figure that out.
I love it.
Okay,
Yes,
could I
please.
ask a couple of, could I ask a couple of
Yes,
questions?
Bob,
The
go ahead.
questions that really have bothered me for a while. One line that's bothered me since I read it in Bob Stack's document, which is the developers ran away with the money. It's
Okay.
my impression
Okay, no, it's fine.
that the setup of a commercial leasehold form on a residential community was wrong in the first place. And that was set up to the advantage of the developers. The developers got very well paid for it. And we're left over time with the problem of handling what was agreed to over 100 years. And I didn't realize I was going to live here for 30 of the 100 years and get closer to being burned by it. But so it is. The other thing that I've heard in this meeting is that all the stakeholders should be treated equally. So my question is, why in heaven's name were the people in Roosevelt Island treated so much? Why is their state of equality so much better than ours? Why aren't they being used to make big payments for the state? Why aren't they used to spend money on affordability elsewhere? They have a much more reasonable system right now for the people living there and going forward. And we shouldn't ever, we shouldn't allow public officials ever to sign off on something that says that residential householders should be threatened or even think about for a second that the state will confiscate with no repayment their property. That's a sacred, that property is where the family lives, and it's a sacred thing in American society. So those are my concerns. The sacredness of what's being protected and what wasn't protected. The fact that Roosevelt Island people are treated so much better than we are. And if you know the history, is it true that developers ran away with the money? And is it true that that the commercial leasehold form really favored a commercial interest and never favored residential interests at all? So that's a question for Andrew.
Can I just add 1 second of perspective to that? And then I'll wind
That's
up.
what,
So
that's
from
what
the
I want from
developer's
you.
perspective, the developer's perspective was the city and state came to them in the late 70s or mid 70s when the city was on its knees and says, we need to provide housing. That's 1971. That's how it all kicked off. Typically what happens is for the first 30 years, again, of a 99-year lease, for the 30 years, there was typically a low or a minimized rent schedule. So a developer would develop the buildings, they'd sell the condos, and then they'd make their profit and then step away. And then those people were facing 30 years until they had something. Look, it's still a go into it open-eyed, do your own math, you know, it's caveat emptor, and I hate that, and I'm hating living by it because we're at the bad end of that scale, but it is what it is. So it's not, you know, these aren't greedy guys who are just taking the money and running. Look, they offered and went in, said, we'll pay this for your land, we'll build these buildings, and we'll take that risk. So they're getting paid for risk. So I don't want to color it as them taking the money and look, that's nice and thing to say, but it's rhetoric, you know, and all of us went in and signed a thing that said, with our lawyers advising us, we understand what we're buying. So, but I think it's important now to say that we've crossed that threshold of we've now got a waning asset. It's not ideal, and it's starting to go against what you said in 1971, which is we want to create and maintain households. You don't create and maintain households if people can't afford to be there. So that's why we've got to think about the language of what we're doing, and you either pick that up on the lease renewal or you pick it up later. But That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
The
But
part you didn't
Bob, wait.
answer is why did Roosevelt Island get such a better deal? It was done at the same
Because-
time.
Honestly,
But
I
let me
really
ask
don't
you
know.
this
It could
question.
have been
was set
different
up.
people at the UDC at the time. I just don't know. That's history. I just don't know the
Yeah,
difference. And
exactly.
we've tried to identify that. You know,
Ex-
we haven't been able to identify why there's a difference in thesis.
It was written in with a different contract.
Well,
I mean,
it's actually
that's
pretty
what we learned.
simple. The
Yeah,
original Battery Park City
exactly.
master plan was basically essentially a duplicate of Roosevelt Island. The financial crisis hit. Nobody wanted to build it. Government couldn't afford to build it. They changed the master plan to the commercial model that it is today. It's just entirely different situations.
Interesting. That I didn't even know about, Jeff. Thank you for that. And sorry, I'm moving inside.
Hey, guys,
What
I'm
was I
going to
gonna
drop
say?
off because it's 4 a.m. unless anyone has any other questions. But I
No,
appreciate
thank you so
everybody.
much for being on. Oh my God, I appreciate it. No, and thank you. And then
But
Bob,
if
to
you ever want to know the 2011 deal and the background to it, speak to Jim Hopkins because he was the architect of it. And believe me when I tell you, it was based in being fair for everyone and really treating everyone in the same vein and getting to a solution that anticipated an equitable renegotiation on behalf of everyone. So
yes, no,
it
that
was a
is
good deal
clear.
at the time.
The information that I have
hindsight, it's not fair.
understood supports
Yeah.
that. So thank you. And thank you, Andrew. Thank you for staying up. Please go get some sleep. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm going to go to bed now. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And then Bob, with Roosevelt Island, whatever the changes were that changed what we have a totally different ground lease. It's totally different. So it's not a comparison. It's not a good comparison because the premise is different. Let's focus on finishing this up because we have more to do, I think. Where are we? Betty, are you okay? And Judith, are you okay with the change that was made with Andrew's help?
I'm okay with the change.
Thank you. Judith, are you? I think it's reasonable. It has future affordability. I like that. I can't hear you if you're saying something. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm okay with it, so let's move on. Let's see what else. Let's go down to the bottom. First 6 buildings. Okay, wait, go back where this says no cap. I don't know what that means. Oh, I was talking about pilot. Keep going, sorry. Climate Leadership, Community Protection Act. Okay, we know about that. Pilot. Unlike other homeowners. Got it. Okay. Perfect. Keep going. Okay, so now I added this part, which was I'd like to put in there again. We're going to have a problem with this one. All 18. Well, I think they all should be amended now. Doesn't mean that that's going to listen to it. I think they all should be addressed now. And I don't see how that would interfere with anything that's going on with River and Warren. Because the Battery Park City Authority, all they have to do, Betty, all they have to do is say no.
Well, then put that in there. 'Cause I was gonna say the ones in the 2011 will go ballistic when they hear this. Why can't we
Wait, the
focus
ones
on
in
what's
which one?
going on? I think you're making changes that are very, very negative and are not supported by those in negotiations. That's
I
the more
disagree
critical
with you.
piece.
Pat Smith, are you on the call? Bob Zach, are you on the call? I disagree with you. Bob Zach said all together. I can't see who the attendees are. Won't open.
I've unmuted Bob Zach if you're there, Bob.
Thanks. Forgive me, I'm eating my dinner.
No, you too. I'm eating too. I appreciate
I
you being.
got off a plane
Please-
a while
please-
ago to be able to do this. There are aspects of the ground leases, such as the fair market value provision, that are in the existing 11, 12 settlement leases that we would like to see removed now. This is a very delicate dance we're doing with the authority. And without getting into the gory details, they have said you can take the offer that we're giving the 6 newer buildings if you're in one of the original 12 buildings, but then you've got to give up what you already have. And we've rejected that as a negotiating team. So there are aspects, the fair market value, the 99-year extension, and what happens after the expiration of the settlement provisions. Yes, we'd like to see that taken care of now so that those buildings have a degree of certainty as to what happens through 2069, but not to change the basis on which they're paying ground rent now. Unless we can get a better deal.
Well, hello, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, is a better deal. That's my point, is if we start talking about everybody now and we work together now for affordability, because if you're gonna wait 30 years, or you're gonna wait 10 years or 20 years, I don't know who's gonna be here left, who's gonna be having this argument with you.
Well, to be honest, with Nick on the call, I don't want to go into any great
No, I don't
negotiating
want
strategy until Pat and the rest of the board have weighed in on where we're going to go forward
So
on this.
a simple question, Bob, yes or no to number one? Can you see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no?
Well, I take a more nuanced approach to must be amended to make necessary changes now. You know, what that to me is the way I would go with that. It leaves it open as to what we're amending.
Okay, amended to make necessary changes now.
Yeah, because I don't want to take away the provisions that are beneficial to those buildings.
Fair, although I don't know, yes, okay. Betty?
Well, now it says nothing, so I can't really object to it. I just don't understand why you're so bent on changing it.
Because it's not affordable. You want me to,
Affordability is not really the issue, and it still isn't here.
it is the issue. Two things, Betty.
Not for me, who wants to renegotiate our leases.
The reason why you want to renegotiate your lease is because it's not affordable.
No, because it's expiring.
No, your lease goes to 2069.
No, it goes to 2030.
No, it goes to 2069. You have a fair market reset value coming up now. That's why you need to, or do something.
Right, and that's exactly why. You're saying ours is set. It's not set.
Nick, can you just at least answer that point of it? Is any building here not have a ground lease that expires in 2069? Somebody has a ground lease that expires sooner?
I'm not talking about having it. I'm talking about the cost of it.
I don't know what that means.
The rent amounts. You all have 2011
I was just charging my
agreements.
phone.
I
No,
don't.
it's okay.
I was just charging my phone. Sorry, Justine. I think, and I'm far from an expert, but I think we're talking about two different things here.
Yeah, so.
Betty's building has a ground rent reset coming up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's
Exactly.
why she's keen on making sure that her building has the flexibility to kind of negotiate what it is that makes most sense for the building. 2069 applies to every building, but that's the underlying ground lease of Battery Park City overall.
Correct, but the
two separate issues.
reset
So you're both right. The reset is the one coming up. The reset's
is
the one
coming up
coming up in
now.
2024. I don't know, Betty, the exact year, but two separate things. Both kind
But
of
the reason why you
relevant,
want
but
to renegotiate the fair market value reset provision is because it's not affordable.
I mean, I think Betty should talk about why it is.
Well,
I
I'm
think she's
asking her.
saying it's going to expire. That's why she wants the renegotiate.
I don't know what that means, it's going to expire.
So, I'm sorry, the ground rent reset is coming due at
Yeah.
whatever year it is, 2024. So in advance of that, he wants to negotiate. I bet you can speak for you
Right.
yourself. But I think that's what you're saying.
Because,
is it?
right, ours is coming
If it
due
could be
for a
less, if it could be more
reappraisal date.
affordable, great.
And we don't want
but
the fair market value. We want to go to something else. Those of you with
Right.
2011 agreements have yours all set for you. We're one of the 6 that don't.
I understand that, Betty, but
if I
you
rent an
keep.
apartment for a
but you
year,
don't.
Justine, if I rent an apartment for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of that year my lease comes due, I want to negotiate with my landlord on a new lease.
Right.
I want to negotiate because the lease is going to expire. That's the primary driver. I'm also going to say to the landlord, hey, I've been a great tenant. I always pay rent on time. I don't throw wild
So
parties.
you mean
Can
my
I get a
lease
reduction in
expires in
rent?
26?
But what drives it is the fact that it's expiring. That's what Betty's saying, I think.
I don't understand how hers is expiring. I can understand that the reset comes into play.
I'm sorry. I'm using the wrong word. I'm using the
Yeah,
wrong word. I'm sorry.
thank you. I'm sorry.
It's resetting. It's resetting.
Mhm.
which
The
functionally
value, the
means,
payments are resetting.
the agreement she has now are expiring and resetting to something else. But you're right. The better term to use is reset. I apologize.
No,
Right,
that's okay.
Betty?
I'm sorry to be dense about it because there's two different things to me.
No. It's
right?
resetting. It's resetting. The current arrangement she has is going to reset unless
To-
it is
And it's
renegotiated.
going to reset to an amount that is considered unaffordable for her building, just like it's
Well,
being
it's
considered.
going to go to the fair market value, which your building has gone beyond with 2011. My building has not. So
Mine
for
has
the
not
6
gone to fair
remaining-
market value, Betty.
Well, exactly. As I said, you have an agreement that 2011 that bypasses the fair market value until
No, it just
2042.
yeah, it just pushed it down the road.
Postponed, right? Mine hasn't.
I'm aware of that, and that is why that I'm partly fighting for this amendment to get passed, to help you and help all the buildings. Because
What
it's
I'm
not
saying is
affordable.
you're taking away from us with short-term needs to focus on the long-term needs of
Okay,
others.
Betty,
I'm
I
saying don't
disagree
mix
with
apples
you.
and oranges.
Okay, Betty, you know what? I disagree. Don't vote for the amendment then,
Yes.
if you don't like.
Everyone,
I'm done with this nonsense. At the end of the day, everything here is with the goal to make it more affordable, a better deal. I don't know what else to say for everybody. That is the point of this. That is the point of my argument. That is the point of my advocacy for this. That is the point of my research into trying to amend the ground rent, is to make it more affordable. That helps the people in the 6 buildings. It helps the people in the other 12 buildings. It helps everybody. I'm sorry that we disagree about that. I do not believe that anything here would be taken by the authority as a reason to say, well, Community Board 1 said this, so your deal's off. Please, come on. We're asking for we want necessary changes. I agree with Bob Zach. Necessary is a matter of question here. We're being vague because we don't want to get into the weeds, which is what you and Jeff said. So I'm sorry, I disagree. I am okay if you vote against it because I think I'm trying to balance it out. And again, the goal in my perspective is to protect and preserve affordability for these folks, which will only be giving benefit to everybody else. So anybody, I'm sure Betty doesn't like this language either, but maybe she does. Anybody else have a comment about that one?
Justine, really quick, just doing a time check. It's 9:01. We have a team from EDC and the citywide ferry system. They've been very patiently waiting.
Let's hurry up and finish this. Let's go. Let's do it 5 minutes. Let's try to finish up. Yes and no. Goal 2. People unmute and speak.
On point 3, why do we say BPCA acknowledges? Why don't we just say many of these constituents have owned?
Perfect. Yes, please. This was me trying to type and cut and paste. So yes.
Okay. Start with many. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. This was me. Yeah. So yes. And then the next one's probably gonna be the same thing. But if you're okay with it, let's keep going. And again, many of these
It's the
same.
same many. Yeah, many.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just me cutting and pasting and not really focused. And then replace it with a fixed schedule. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, because that's fair. Allow condominiums to work together. I think that's fair, Nick. I don't think it's insulting anybody by saying allow condominiums in Battery Park City to work together.
Yeah.
Consider the condominium owners' expenses. Perfect. I'm good with that. And we're urging the city officials, yeah, facilitate fair time and timely negotiations, pursue, implement. What's the last one? Go down.
If you want to add affordability after fairness, we could do that.
I would like to do that. Thank you.
Then I'd like to call the question.
I second it. Let's do but how dare I say people who say no and leave it at that?
Few of us. Let's just do a roll
That's-
call. There's few
Roll
of us.
call, do roll call.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna stop sharing because I don't want everyone to see my vote sheet. Okay, so we'll do a roll call. Justine,
Yes.
Cassell,
Sarah, you're muted. Come come back to her.
Okay.
She says her computer is down now.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I'll tell her to weigh in.
Okay. Galloway,
Yes.
Kay,
Abstain.
Schneck.
Schneck votes yes.
Thank you. Weinstock,
Yes.
Forst,
Robin.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Okay.
It's okay.
Do we have
Sorry.
Robin? Cassell, Sarah there.
She's trying to vote yes, was stuck on the document. Unmute yourself, Sarah. Go ahead, unmute yourself if you can. She's texting me. That's why I'm.
Sarah, close the document so you can see the window.
Mm. You can't unmute her, can you, Lucian? No, she's on the
Let me.
phone.
Well, maybe yeah, that's a good idea actually. Sarah, I've unmuted you.
Okay.
Yay.
Hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Cassell votes yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna remute you now, so the motion carries.
Wait. Let me find out where you are first.
All right, congratulations, committee. You've made this resolution. Okay.
All right. Let's please, let's welcome
Okay.
our guests.
Yes, our next guests, Justine, are Randy Miranda, Franny. Let's see. Actually, we'll move everyone over. I'm sorry. Franny Civitano, Randy Miranda, and Jeffrey Brault, who represent together EDC and Hornblower, and they'll talk to us about updates about the West Side Citywide Ferry Service. So all three of you are now able to unmute yourselves, turn on your videos, what have you.
And first and foremost, thank you so much for putting up with that. That was so.
No, it's
So
all right. Thank you.
Welcome to our world here, but thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
nice to see you
Justine.
guys with a free.
Hey, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. We'll be very quick. We basically just wanted to come back because we recognize the summer break is coming, and the next time we see each other may very well be, or should be, once we launch this route already. And wanted to just be respectful of the fact that last time we were here, you had some thoughts around queuing and some concerns, and I know since then a subset of us, including Franny, Jeffrey, Lucian, and I believe yourself and some others went out there and had a walkthrough. And I know we discussed what the issues were, came up with a plan that makes sense and everyone is on board, but basically just want to come in today and make sure that you are, still aware that we are planning to launch this summer and give you an opportunity to just ask anything else that you need at this point, or otherwise happy to let you continue with your agenda.
First of all, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming back to talk to us and just give us the opportunity. I felt like that walkthrough was perfect. You guys did a really good job of letting us know what you had planned. You're working with the Alliance. I think it's a good thing. And yeah, it was the coldest day, I think, of the year that we were outside there, and it was horrifying. But
it really was. It really was.
It really was. Yeah. No, that was just so not fun. But no, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate you sitting through this all. If we could just make sure that we have phone numbers. I think we said that last time with Lucian having phone numbers. If there's an issue, if anything with the noise or queuing or already something is happening that we need to be talking to each other. Having that.
Okay. That's okay. I know Lucian has my contacts, but I'll make sure that some additional folks also have it. Then just the last thing, just on city experiences, Jeffrey, if you all in the community board have upcoming events or things happening in the summer that you think would be helpful for Jeffrey and his team to be out there tabling or helping in any way, trying to get the word out about the ferry, happy to make that connection and make sure that Jeffrey and his team is out there as well.
I'm assuming you're already in contact with with Nick's Bordeaux, right, and the authority, because they'll, and then.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, yeah, that would be my first suggestions of people to go to. But, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody on the board have any questions or anybody have anything to say? I see Bob and Robin have their hands up, but they may have just been up from before.
Real quickly, if Eddie and Lucian, I know they have my contact information as well, can share it with everyone and can also share our contact center information. So as there are anything that you want to report into our team, you can do it through that as well.
I just wanted to say that I think I've thought from the beginning it was a good idea, and I really think it adds value to the downtown community, value to the disabled community, value to the city of New York, and value to the people of the world that get to enjoy our West Coast. I think it's terrific.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll
Betty
share
K, please.
When it's up and running, when we're about to launch, we'll share with Lucian. So, hopefully some of you are out there and able to join us on that first day.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. And Betty, you had your hand up. That's new, so please speak.
I was just going to say, well, thank you so much. And I really look forward to the launch. So good luck with the preparations.
Oh, is there a date for the launch? I forget.
Not yet. We're working really hard. It's basically once we complete construction over at St. George. So,
Okay.
we'll already have a pier and have everything in place, but St. George doesn't. So once we work there this summer, we'll be able to launch shortly after.
And are you working now? Or is it back after COVID, everything probably got put on
We
hold?
are, and actually the barge is there. It's just there are some tricky piles that are that were a little bit problematic, but we're working through that. And so we hope to be able to share a date very soon with people publicly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's great. All right. The puppy wanted a ride here. This one puppy.
I love it.
Well,
So
thank
the-
you all.
So
Thank you so much.
the ferry team, there's I think Justine's recommendation for you to be connected with Brookfield because they're putting together they're partnering with some production companies to activate different public areas around Brookfield Place, and so that's definitely something where people may want to be a destination, but also the tunnels, the towers, people are reaching out to us, and so that's a major event, and it's a destination event, so that may be something also that could drive a lot of Staten Island traffic. So that's something to keep your eye on.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you guys
Thank you.
here again. I'm sorry it was 9:15 and you're still here. Thank you for doing
That's
it.
all right. Thank you so much.
having
Appreciate
us.
it. You all have a great time. Next time we'll see each other, it'll be hopefully on a ferry.
Hopefully on a ferry. There you go. I like that. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right, next, folks. I think we have, let's let poor Patrick Murphy go next. And then Nick,
Super.
you take us home.
Pat, you can unmute yourself, Pat, if you're still there.
Hello, how are you?
Great, right? Oh my God. Great, long day. I'm sorry, Pat. This is a long one.
I thought you told me the last time it was going to be a short one.
Yeah, right? No. Darn it. But all right, thank you.
All right. My report's attached to Nick's report. Really, I'll make it short. There's an increase in homeless, of course, throughout the park, and we're dealing with that. We gave out 115 masks, were distributed in May.
Nice.
And we did 2,635 location checks. The bathrooms in the park are going to be open now until 9 o'clock at night. Okay.
Mhm.
So basically that's it. And we're dealing with the ice cream truck that has come around.
What's the deal?
And
The truck,
started up.
is it illegally parked? What's the deal with it? Like what? It's or
they're a vendor, and none of the vendors are allowed in Battery Park.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
I should
so
know.
they don't give out permits to vendors. There's only certain places they can be,
Okay,
and the park is not one of them. Okay,
yep.
That's really about it, unless you guys have something for me.
No, vendors, this
Actually, I did.
Oh, please, Betty, yes.
I just wanted to ask about in early May, there were the two holdups of teens, one on North End Avenue and one on Chambers Street.
Yeah,
anything come to-
yeah, it came across, but it never came across 911 concerning that I don't know where they called it in, the teenagers, but from what I understand, they claim that it happened over by Stuyvesant High School. So, and I believe the police made an arrest on the West Street at the time. So they did one robbery, and while it was being reported to the police in one section, the second robbery that they went to do, they ended up getting arrested and caught down on off the West Side Highway on the other side.
Oh, wow. Okay, question about the bathrooms, just real quick, and then I'll call on Bob. And I don't know if Robin's hand is up from before, but my quick question is about the bathrooms. As they're putting in that mini putt-putt thing later on in the summer, I think they're gonna be open till 10, and then maybe they're gonna have the breakdown, whatever. Will the bathrooms, I know, Nick, I think we talked about it in person, but I'm gonna ask now, will the bathrooms be open while they're there? Because I think they need to be, whether it's going to be the people or whatever, but I think the bathrooms at Wagner Park need to be open while you've got activation outside. Are you aware
Well,
of that?
that would be the authorities' decision on that. Right now, I know they just started it June 1st, having the bathrooms extended till 9 o'clock.
Okay, so we'll see if it goes longer, but that's up to them, and then you guys just patrol it if necessary.
Oh, we patrol, and we also, show up at the bathrooms at closing time
Okay.
to
that
make
makes-
sure, because they do have issues, like I said, with the homeless in the bathroom.
Okay.
So we've been dealing with that.
Well, thank you. All right, very cool. Anybody else? Bob, you do. Your hands up, speak. There you go. You're on mute, Bob.
I just wanted to say, to ask for a highlight report of what kind of crimes have been committed in the area, because I walk a lot every day and I've seen much more dangerous conditions, and also neighbors and friends advise me on streets I shouldn't wander on and places that they think are dangerous. Are things more dangerous? Should people take more precautions? When we're confronted by someone, then what should we do is the question I've had over and over, because when it happens in real time, I don't have the understanding to kind of throw into action. Thank you.
Well, the only thing that I could say is historic Battery Park. Down at PRA, the safety ambassador had to call 911. Person came up to them complaining of being assaulted, which actually happened in historic Battery Park. Okay, so over in that area, they're having issues with the homeless, and especially around by the train station entrance, which is closer towards the Staten Island Ferry over in there. Obviously, everybody needs to have, their wits about them, when you're walking around, be aware of your surroundings. I can tell you this, I mean, I ride the trains every day. So, the police are out there, they're in the trains. I've seen them on the platforms, and the trains are getting a lot more busy than they have been. Now if, I ride the number one from Penn Station. So when you're traveling at commuter time, back and forth, there's been 1 or 2 days so far now where I end up standing. Okay, so the car is full. So I think as more people get out there on the street, you're going to have less encounters worrying about that. The problem is, I always advise people to stay away. When I used to carry a lot of money before I became a cop and I worked in Duffy Square in the movie theaters, we always walked in towards the outside of the street. You never walk close to a building line. So you always walk out closest to the curb. Okay, this way nobody can pull you in and rob you. So, that's always a good practice. That's the way I've always been. So, the whole thing is, if it doesn't feel right, trust your gut and move someplace else.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have extra advice for Asian Americans that are out there? Because I have some access to reports happening in the Asian press, and there's a lot of things going on. And I think they're very, very tragic and unfortunate, but they're dangerous.
Bob, the only thing I could say is, in today's world, everybody has to keep their wits about them and watch what's going on. I mean, you can't bury your head in a cell phone as you're walking along in the street, texting or anything else like that. You got to be cautious when people are walking up on you. Like the last time I told you, if you see somebody getting too close, you just stick out your hand like a stop sign. And I used to box.
Yeah.
So when I stick out my hand, I already know my hand's up and ready to defend myself. So if you have your hand up, your face is already half protected with one hand up. So, I even taught my kids that when people get too close, stick your hand up as a stop sign.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? Sorry, I'm moving around. Robin, I don't think you want to talk because your hand's been up for a while now, but if you do, just unmute yourself. All right, Patrick, I think it's fair to say you can go. And I don't think anybody in the attendees, I'm not looking. Nobody's hands raised. Okay, cool.
All right, thank you, and to all, good night.
To all, good night. Nick, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Let me put my camera back on. Okay. Good evening. Just when I put these reports together, and my wife says to me, Nick, what are you doing for all that time? And I said, I really put a lot of care into the reports. And I looked at last year's report, June of 2020, and it was only 8 pages. So I'm getting perhaps more long-winded in my age, but it's also because we have so much going on. I'll be brief, or as brief as I can, but I do want to hit on some highlights. And Bob, thank you for that. The other thing I would add is Pat and I, as well as Justine and Tammy, Pat Moore, a lot of other folks as well, attend the First Precinct Community Council every month. It's the last Thursday of every month, and I have it in my report here each month as well. But it's the last Thursday of every month, usually held in person at the First Precinct, but it's been being held via WebEx or via Zoom over these past few months as well. And that's really a nice opportunity and forum for folks to raise anything that may be of concern with them with respect to quality of life or crime in the First Precinct overall. So I would draw your attention to that if you'd like to attend. Commanding officer presides. We have a lot of the other community affairs officers as well helping answer questions for the community. So a very good resource, and Rest assured, you're not alone. We have a great partnership with the first precinct. We have our neighborhood coordination officers. We have Pat and the team. So very lucky to live in a very safe neighborhood of New York City, but certainly want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep it that way. Okay, first item on the agenda on my report here is it's been about 14 months now that the top item has been COVID. One of these days it will no longer be, but we're not quite there yet. Just wanted to make sure that everyone had the latest numbers here. We are well now over 19 million New Yorkers with at least one dose of the vaccine in New York State, including over 4 million in New York City alone. So we are getting there, Battery Park City. Let's keep it up. We have some of the information there that we always have up top about how to get vaccines and how to determine eligibility. Just now, everyone who's over the age of 12, as we know. The top of page 2, I put this out in a number of emails blasted to the community, but just so we have it again, there are now additional vaccination appointments available at the Conrad Hotel in Battery Park City, as we know, June 4th, June 7th, June 11th, and June 18th. So you'll see I put a note there, let's keep getting vaccinated at Battery Park City. You can click on any one of those hyperlinks or just go to the New York City Health Department's vaccination site and book your appointment today if you hadn't had it. They'll book them both for you at one time, the first and second dose. Percent positive rates in that chart, you'll see we are now down to essentially 1 case in Battery Park City and down below 1% citywide, which is an incredible milestone that didn't seem like we'd ever get to earlier. But we are beating it back, folks. So let's keep on getting vaccinated and pressing on. I will draw your attention to the rightmost quadrant of that chart. Those first 3 days to the furthest right, 5/20th through 26th, 19th through 25th, and 18th. We're actually at 0% for each of Battery Park City zip codes, which is a very exciting thing to hit. We're now at 1 case in the north or in the south over the past week, but still pressing on. Moving on to Pride 2021, as we had last year, we have to commemorate the month. We have the Pride painted bench in the north of the neighborhood, and we also have some lights along the Esplanade with the Pride colors. So that's just something to mark when you are moving out and about throughout the neighborhood. Top of page 3, Lucian, our summer events calendar is now out. You will have all seen the release that went out last week. But the kind of the newsy item here is that in-person programming for the summer is now back in Battery Park City. So many of the staples you have all come to know and love over these years. River and Blues, the Battery Dance Festival, River to River Festival, the singing circles. All those things are back and happening in Battery Park City. And I put it all here in the report as well as in our calendar online. Lucian has the electronic version, and this will be posted on our website over the next day or so you can click into here. But a couple of items coming up in June. Obviously, we have Gotham Cheer, we have Pride Silent Disco to commemorate Pride Month. We have Juneteenth coming up, Juneteenth celebration, which is now a state holiday, for those of you who may not know. And we also have the Interventions exhibit that's in partnership with the Borough of Manhattan Community College, and that features artwork by 2 artists who also have pieces in Battery Park City's art collection. Ned Smythe as a piece in Battery Park City, and Mildred Howard has the temporary installation, The House That Shall Not Pass, for any color than its own. They both have work on display also at the Shirley Friedman Art Center at BMCC with our partnership, through our partnership with them. So I'll tick down those events. Lucian, if you can just click down here, sorry, to the middle of page 5. Justine, I'm trying to go fast. Couple of items here just so
Nick, real quick, I'm sorry, it's Sarah.
Oh, hey, Sarah.
Justine is locked out. Can you let her in?
Yes. Lucian?
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, Nick.
No, it's okay. Should I continue? I guess.
Yes, continue, Nick. Sorry, I got bumped.
Okay.
I was texting Sarah and you to say, let me in to Lucian.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I apologize. Okay. No, I heard you, but I got bumped out. So excuse me.
All right, I will press on here for the benefit of the committee, but just a couple of things to tick down. And sorry, Justine, thank you. We have a number of ongoing projects in the neighborhood, as we know. We brought it up last week, but the New York City Police Memorial is being expanded, as we know. Wonderful that it's being expanded. Very unfortunate that it has to be expanded, but it's being expanded to accommodate the names of additional officers who have fallen in the line of duty. The expansion itself is being designed by Stuart Crawford, who is the same architect who built the the museum the first time around in the 1990s. So it's being expanded with the same designer and utilizing actually the same green granite as last time. So there's a nice continuity and through line. That should be done in September. The ball field terrace waterproofing and restoration project. There was a piece in this last week that Matt did a real good job on the broadsheet writing up. That's scheduled now for completion in September as well, and that's to waterproof and remediate the area in asphalt green and to the ball field terrace. Speaking of the ball fields and community center resiliency project got underway last week with the mobilization on site. And I want to thank, again, I do it every time, but it bears repeating. I want to thank the community board and Betty specifically for helping shepherd through that revocable consent back in January, which we went through with the Department of Transportation to get permission to go on a portion of the land to build as protection, to protect the ball fields, 50,000 youth who use them annually from the threat of storm surge and flooding. So you can read more about that there, but that is ongoing. Top of page 6, I was keeping leadership and Justine and Tammy and at the West 10th Street basketball courts. Painting and striping is now complete, and they are back open to the public as of May 20th. There's a picture there of some local youth playing. I want to thank our partners at EDC for helping accommodate and lead that project. That was the expansion again of the basketball courts and the Liberty Community Gardens in Battery Park City. As a related matter, right below that picture, the sidewalk fencing, which I know has been a kind of bugaboo for a while, adjacent to 225 Rector, which was blocking the sidewalk access between Albany Street and Rector Place, is also down and removed. That was as of early May, not long after we last met, in fact. So that is all now completely open up, accessible to the public. Project is complete, and expanded access to the public to treasured public amenities. Scrolling down, Lucian, you can just go down past page 7. We mentioned art cleaning last month. That's just a couple of pictures there of our work in maintaining the beautiful public art in Battery Park City.
And Nick, also, I think,
yes, ma'am.
I'm interrupting you. I think that you actually were able to finish up or get the DOT finished up some work in front of, oh, darn it.
Oh, yes, 300 Rector, the curb valve,
Yeah, the curb ground. And now, of
Yes.
course, you've moved it in front of the soundings, but that's all right.
Yeah, that was,
But I think
can't
it's
take for that except for trying to nudge people, but we got the permits through and that has been sealed up and closed off. That was, it took a while to get some of the necessary approvals.
Yeah.
But yes, that is all done now. So
That's kudos
actually,
to
no,
you for getting that done.
I thought about that today and I said, I should put that in the report. And I said to myself, you know what, Nick, the report's 13 pages enough
Long.
as it
But
is,
no,
so-
I don't know
Yes.
if
But thank
that
you for that.
lovely lady,
Yes, that is in there. Yes, Helene, I have to write email
Helene,
Helene
yes.
back, but she'll be pleased to know it's
she'll
done.
be pleased to know. I don't know if she stuck with us this long, but
You
thank
can
you.
scroll down. Of course, I think I have an email that I owe her anyhow. We can buzz past this, Lucian. We talked about iNaturalist last week, so if you can fast forward to page 9 if you don't want. We just tick down the resiliency projects. We talk about this every month as well. The updates here, obviously, is that we have the ball field construction starting, which is a big deal, and we will next be before the EPC Environmental Protection Committee on June 21st. That's the first item under the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project. And all the links to all the public meetings and presentations can be found there. All right, scrolling through here, Lucian, you can go to middle of page 10. We had our blood drive the last time on May 18th. We're doing these fairly regularly now. We did our last one on May 18th, and over the course of the past year already, we did our first one last June. Matter of fact, we've done 8 over the course of the year. We've got over 600 gifts of life donated by the local community. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time out and donating blood to ensure that the city's blood supply can get closer to where it needs to be. Next one, stay tuned, will likely be in August, looking at August 3rd tentatively, but we'll have more information for that in July for you when we come back before the committee. Okay, scrolling through, we can go to page 11. Those are just some reminders about Poetry Path, temporary art, community composting, dog waste composting, all of which we know. There's a really great story that was we did with Now This about dog waste composting, actually, which is linked there. Don't have to watch it now, but it's linked if you want to click it and watch it. It's a really nice kind of overview of the program and why it really can be important for sustainability going forward. You'd be surprised how much dog waste ends up in the landfill every year, and if we can divert some of that and use it for other means. It helps sustainability overall. It all takes all of us. Okay, top of page 12. We have our board meeting schedule, obviously, and I would just draw your attention to the bottom of page 12. This has been out on social media as well, but Tommy Moran, who's a detective with the 1st Precinct after 27 years of service, had his walkout for the last time from the 1st Precinct on Friday afternoon. So congratulations, Tommy, and thank you for always being so accessible. Patrick and I worked with Tom often on matters large and small, and he was always there for the community, and a real tribute to the profession. So thank you, Tommy, for everything that you do. Tribeca Film Festival, as you know, just as a reminder, that's going to be in town from the 9th to the 20th. We'll have 2 places in Battery Park City where there's a presence there. The first is the free film screenings and performances nightly at the Lower Plaza, on the waterfront behind Brookfield Place. And then there'll be festival-related activations at PRA Plaza, art installations and things along those lines that people can walk around and explore. And Pat covered the ambassador numbers, so that was it. Justin, I went as fast as I could. I think that was everything.
Yeah, look, I think even at this point of the night, you're motivated to go fast. Just get it done too. It's so late. I'm so sorry, everybody.
It's okay. It's all here for you guys. I'll put it online. You can, pick through it, and any questions you have anytime, you know where I'm at.
Yep. And Nick, thank you so much for this. Patrick, thank you. And everybody in the committee. This was a bit harrowing. This topic tonight, and this length of meeting. So I appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that went into putting this resolution together. Betty, I'm sorry, it's not exactly what you wanted, but I cannot tell you how invaluable your input and your energy and your work was to it. And Jeff and Bob and everybody else for weighing in and having an opinion, and any of the attendees, if there are any left, for speaking at this point. But I appreciate it. I really feel like it's something that we need to do, and I'm glad we weighed in on it. So thank you. And I think I want to call this meeting to a close. Yeah, unless anybody has any questions for Nick before I do that. I see none, and I honestly don't see any attendees. Oh, 3 attendees. But nobody's raising their hands, so that is a good thing. I think you're free. We're free to go. I see no hands.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
There you go. Good night, everyone. Thank you all for hanging in there.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Take care.